right down and enjoy the show that's going to come see you very soon. This is all on this is almighty. This is Ball Run. We are the Bandcast. We will not be long, just setting up the show. So please sit right down. Please take a little break. Come to the show, we will not be long, we will be right there. Don't forget to follow, please hit it right down and enjoy the show that's going to come see you very soon. This is all on this is almighty. This is Ball Run. We are the Bandcast. We will not be long, just setting up the show. So please sit right down. Take a little break. Come to the show, we will not be long, we will be right there. Don't forget to follow, please hit it right down and enjoy the show that's going to come see you very soon. This is all on this is almighty. This is Ball Run. We are the Bandcast. We will not be long, just setting up the show. So please sit right down. Please take a little break. Come to the show. We will not be long. We will be right there. Don't forget to follow. Please hit it right down and enjoy the show that's going to come see you very soon. This is all on this is almighty. This is Ball Run. We are the Bandcast. We will not be long, just setting up the show. So please sit right down. Please take a little break. Come to the show, we will not be long, we will be right there. Don't forget to follow, please hit it right down and enjoy the show that's going to come see you very soon. This is all on this is almighty. This is Ball Run. We are the Bandcast. We will not be long, just setting up the show. So please sit right down. Take a little break. Come to the show, we will not be long, we will be right there. Don't forget to follow, please hit it right down and enjoy the show that's going to come see you very soon. This is all on this is almighty. This is Ball Run. We are the Bandcast. We will not be long, just setting up the show. So please sit right down. Please take a little break. Come to the show, we will not be long, we will be right there. Don't forget to follow, please hit it right down and enjoy the show that's going to come see you very soon. We are live.
Oh,
We're
now
live.
you can see us. Hi.
I didn't
Good
do any
evening,
plugging, like all the
ladies
plugging
and
was done
gentlemen.
before.
Or the plug-in. We got Posy back. Which side is he? He's on this side. There he is, the man himself. There's Zombie. Over the other side there, we got Almighty. He's over there. I disappear when I do that. It's probably because of my armpit smell. So this evening we're going to be talking about politics mainly, and also social standings on certain stuff.
This side.
Huh?
I was trying to get the orientation down. Let's see where you're at.
Yeah, I was
Show
kind
my
of
screen.
pointing wrong ways and stuff like that. Murder.
Yay!
Yeah, that's pretty
We were
much
going to
it.
start off with a nice question, like who are we going to take to a desert island? But
Yeah.
I do you reckon we should start off with that one?
I mean, that could be more for a guest. And
Go on then,
technically-
Almighty. You just want to say you want to take to a desert island. Who do you want to take to a desert island?
I mean, who do I want to take?
Yeah,
Honestly, Jim Carrey.
you keep you laughing though. But to be
It'll
honest,
keep me laughing. It'll be full of insight of life.
yeah,
Who knows if he's any good at survival? But we'll find out.
he's a very lean man. Yeah, but he could climb a tree very quickly, get coconuts
can.
down. Bet he can.
I think I would want to bring someone who knows how to build boats.
That's a good
smart.
one.
Yeah, smart.
Yeah.
That's smart.
Yeah, then
Posy?
Well, Buddha, of course.
Buddha, of course. You know, I'd take that big round Welsh guy that's lives in America now and does the TV shows. What's his name?
Oh, I know who you're talking about. No one likes him, right?
Yeah,
That's
no
all
one
it-
likes.
yeah.
No one likes him. I'd take him because
James
I could.
Corden.
That's him.
Yeah.
When I got annoyed with him, I could just eat him.
I mean, he is a
He's a
big
big
guy.
lad. He'd last for ages. You can keep it salt. You can make some salt out of the seawater. You know, keep for ages. That would. So the ethical standing of murder and where we all stand with it, and
Is
also
is it the ethical standard of murder, or is it laws that go with it as well?
I think the laws could get a bit scary and out of it could go on forever with the laws, couldn't it?
Well, the ethics is what guides most of the laws.
Yeah, to a certain degree, but I mean, obviously in the UK, it's more of a manslaughter. It goes to that. So Posy, I think you've got a little bit to say about all this, and also the gun crime side, the gun law thing of it in the US. Can we start with you, my friend?
Yeah, sure. This might be kind of a lengthy intro to how I feel about it, but I think it'll give us a good framework.
Yeah, I think so.
To go off of.
Something for us to work off. One question before you go on: is
Sure,
Mrs.
sure.
Zombie coming in today? Zombie, because I would like to mod her. She comes to every stream, so I feel she deserves it.
She should be around. She has to run to the store quick right now. So after that, I don't know when she'll be here, but I'm sure she'll be here.
Yeah,
She always
cool.
is.
She's our #1 fan. Mainly Zombie. But
Mine at
Alice
least,
as well.
yeah.
Right, the floor is yours, Posy, my friend.
All right. Hey, everybody. So murder. Wow. So I think probably the best way to sum up my stance on it is that it's immoral, and the way that we can determine morality is a really simple way to determine morality is if something directly harms or even indirectly harms another human being or impedes on their right to exist, then it's probably bad, right? That making it immoral. So in that sense, murder is absolutely wrong in any circumstance. But that being said, it still happens, right? We still have this giant problem of people killing people, and the question as it was posed to me in my chat, the way that I took it was philosophical. Is it philosophically wrong, or when is it ever okay? And that leads down the thought of like self-defense or like home defense. And I struggled with it all weekend. The thought of like, would I be okay taking another person's life if I were ever put in a situation where that seemed like the thing to do? And I think that even in extreme circumstances, like someone breaking into my house and even directly threatening me, I think it would be the last thing that I would go for. And not to say that I wouldn't defend myself. I think there's a wide spectrum of defense options. Like I would go for a baseball bat before I went for a gun, if that makes sense.
Kick to the
Yeah.
balls. Kick to the balls.
And I mean that in every circumstance. I don't want to. I would never want to kill anybody.
Let me ask
I would never want that on my conscience.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask, when you say like going for weapons, like with me, I think what I do is put enough barriers between myself and the individual who would be breaking in to indicate for them to actually get to the point where they get to me, they'd have to fucking try. They'd have to put in a lot of effort to get to me in that point. So that would, be indicative of whatever, of intent to do physical harm, like severe harm and stuff like that to our family and that type of thing. So like the way I have my house set up is if there's only one way for somebody to break in, and I have cameras on that section, and we have a home plan where it's like, okay, the wife protects the kids, I stand at the door and wait. Whoever gets in the door first, either the police get there first, or if the guy gets in the door first, decides what happens next. What do you think about that type of like scenario there? Because like, grabbing a bat or whatever, you have to fight them,
Yeah.
Like, I give it enough time to make it so that the person has to force their way to get to me in the first place before I open fire. But at the same time, as soon as they come in the door, I'm not holding back.
Yeah. I so it's such a hard it's such a hard scenario to respond to because, like, I mean, I can say all day long that I don't want to kill someone, but if I were in the same situation, would I? You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it's not up to you. Like, it's somebody else forcing you at some point. Like I said, like with me, it's I put so many barriers between, and like we have it set so if the police get there before he gets in or she gets in, then that's what happens. Like then they take care of it out there, and I don't have to do shit. But at the same time, it's like, okay, for you to get in this door, you're going to have to do a lot, and I'm going to respond with the exact same amount of force just from a distance.
Yeah,
See,
I think that's
sorry.
well. I think just real quick, you hit on exactly how I see it, and I think proportional force is the way that I would respond. Because I'm kind of set up in a similar way. I mean, not like physical barricades or anything, but if you were going to break into my house, you'd be most likely to do it from the opposite side of where I'm at most of the time. So it would be pretty clear intent. But if someone runs back with a knife, I will absolutely go for a bat. Or if someone runs back with a gun but they're not pointing it, absolutely go for a bat. You know what I mean? Like there's I would do anything I could to avoid shooting them.
You have.
I feel bad though, because the whole bad thing that bothers me, not in the sense that it does like you're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong at all because that is your personal choice. It's just that it might like I was a trained military police officer. I've seen home defense like situations. Statistically speaking, that is the worst thing. If someone has a gun running back or something like that, like and you have the opportunity to use a firearm, just the mere like.
I think what
drawing
Pozzy's
down.
saying is he has levels. And the
and
levels that you'll get to. The only question I personally have, and I think it kind of goes along what Zombie's saying, is where do you know those levels? I mean, from a British point of view, most of our home invasions or robberies, breaking and entering, the person is out, or the person, as soon as they find out that there's somebody actually in the house, they try to escape as quick as possible because they're not after hurting anybody. They want to steal stuff and they want to get out. But I lived in South Africa. And South African crime is very similar to American crime in the sense of if they break into your house and they find somebody there, more than likely they will attack the person that is in the house.
Yeah, to keep them from being able to report it. Yeah,
exactly. In the UK, it's not like that. But I think Pozzy's trying to say is like he would rather go to lesser means before he goes to the extreme. Personally, my point of view, Pozzy, and I agree with you. If someone broke into my house, first thing I would do is I'd go and look after my kids and I'd sit with my kids. And if they can nick whatever they want to steal, but if they go near my kids, that's it. But I couldn't. We as British guys, we don't think of robbery as the same as you guys. You think of it as going to be an attack on you. We don't see that.
Well, see, like when I'm talking about it is there's enough of a barricade between the doors, like. For them to break down my door to get in, I would have to notice, and then I would be there at the door, like saying, "Hey, knock it the fuck off! The police are coming." They would have to know the cops are on their way, and that I'm going to defend my. You know what I mean? There's cameras on the door. Like at that point, like it's not just like someone breaking in and then me coming out and them saying, "Oh fuck, they're here," and they run away. That's not what I'm referring to. Like I would literally be there saying, "I will shoot you if you come through the door." Like I would be yelling it on camera and everything like that.
But I think Pozzy's saying the same thing as you. I think he's saying the same thing as you, but he's saying that he would rather not. And I understand that.
I think what Pozzy's saying, this is how I heard it, is if push comes to shove, then he will do it. But if he doesn't have to do it, then he won't do it.
Yeah.
Right. There's got to be a push first.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm thinking, like, in my standpoint, the push is coming through the front door. Because it would take that much effort to get through it. And you also got to remember how I'm not bringing up how my apartment's set up. For them to come into my front door, they'd be coming into my main living space where I would be and that type of thing, that type of area. So it wouldn't just be like, oh, they get in and then there's multiple places they can go where I can hide. Yeah. You know, it's like, that's my barrier. That's all that's left between me and the world. So, like, I don't even have a door in my room.
Okay.
So, like, that's, like, where it is. Like, my wife would be with the kids through the last line of defense, which is their bedroom door. And then I would be the thing that they would have to get past to get to it. And they're not getting past me to get to the kids.
So, Pozzyman, I mean, there are many different situations that a murder happens.
Mm-hmm.
like we were talking about a second ago, like the crimes of passion, self-defense in the street, accidental murders. I mean, obviously it's accidental.
Manslaughter. It's
Um,
manslaughter.
yeah, it's manslaughter. But how do you feel about, like, for example, a crime of passion? I mean, how do you feel that it should be dealt with?
That's a really good question. And here's where I think we might have a divergence of opinion a little bit. I believe that prison punishment for any sort of crime like that, serious crimes, even the most serious crimes, should be reformative rather than punitive. And I'm not sure how the UK is, but here in the US, prison is almost 100% punitive, right?
Yeah.
Like, people don't come out of prison and find it easier to find a job. They don't feel sorry, or I shouldn't generalize like that, but there's not an emphasis on reform at all. It's about punishing someone for what they've done, and I think
it's pretty much, yeah, you're right. You're right, because like the idea, like, specifically, is you go to jail as punishment, not for punishment or whatever, like they say, but like you just being there is all they have a care for. It's like, okay, this is where we're going to keep you. And there's another thing about the problem with our prison system is a lot of it is privately run, where they have contracts with the states that they work for, that they're in, to maintain a minimum occupancy, giving absolutely no incentive whatsoever for the states to try to reform it in the first place, because they need to keep so many people in prison in order to not pay fines to these prisons that are run by companies because of some fucking deal they signed years ago.
But that, Buzzy, your point there about I mean, my feelings towards that personally is that some people can be reformed, 100%. But there are a percentage of people that are career criminals. Like some of our biggest, nastiest gits in our prisons, they're career criminals. They don't know any other life, and they'll do it. I mean, there was Charlie Bronson is your perfect example of a British criminal. They tried everything. They reformed him to anything. In the end, he smashed the prison up and killed 3 or 4 guards. There are.
Wasn't that his first account of murder?
No, he'd killed, because he used to work for the mobs in London, didn't he? So he'd killed before.
One problem is we lump in everybody under that category. Like, we don't.
Yeah.
They just look at people in prison as if everybody's like that. There's like, I don't know, if you're not going to treat anybody differently, we got to treat them all the same. Then they all get treated like a number, and then therefore no one gets reformed, because they need specialized understanding. Like, you need to see each individual person as an individual person. But to keep it simple, it's like, oh no, it's a number. You have this number, and then therefore you're just going to get pushed through. Because anyone making any decisions, they're just looking at it on paper. It's like, oh, inmate number, blah, 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 does this. Therefore, stamp your fucking paperwork and it's gone through.
But Buzzy, do you agree with that? Are there certain criminals that can't be reformed and some that can, or do you not agree with that at all?
Sure. No, sure. There's absolutely some folks like that, and usually those are the people who end up getting life or death sentences in the United States. Well, I shouldn't say usually.
Unfortunately, it's after they do something, and they could have been stopped years before that. They just repeat offenders. Eventually, they kill somebody or do something.
That sounds a lot like a lot of the serial killers out there.
Maybe,
that were out there.
But I guess the question is do you then create the system based on the minority or the exception, or do you manage those exceptions as they arise? Because 99.9, this is not an actual number, but 99.9% of those prisoners probably are not that, right? Like, it's the rare exception.
Yeah, a small percentage.
Did you know Canada actually started screening people for mental disorders when they were coming in through the prisons, and started doing like mental health programs, and they actually saw the repeat offenders, like the number of them, drop off like at least 60% after they started doing that, and actually started getting people like mental health issues instead of actually just like throwing them through the fucking prisons like we do in America. Like,
so the prison system in America just chucks them all in together.
It's private. Like, that's what it is. Like, you have a company, a private business that is contracted by the state to house prisoners. The state is mandated that they have to keep so many people in these prisons, or they have to pay millions of dollars to these companies for not meeting the contract, for breach of contract. So then what happens is these states, they're like, oh, we have no incentive to reform our prisoners or actually do anything whatsoever. Judges, their hands get tied, and they start sending fucking people away, and they don't get reformed. And then they repeat offend. And then even inside the prisons. Okay, I got a degree from the Department of Naval Corrections while I was in the military. The fucking civilian prison system is so fucking corrupt. It's insane. Like, they have no incentive to reform the prisoners while they're there. They have no incentive to even care for them as people while they're fucking there. They give out all these fines and stuff. They're basically ripping them off while they're in prison still for things that are just basic rights in a way. And it's just now being caught up.
That's the only way that slave labor still exists in the United States too, is through the prison system.
It's actually screwing real laborers and real economy, because you got these people who, like, they keep them jailed up for minor offenses, like doing years for fucking like dime bags of fucking weed. Do like 20 years for that shit because third strike, you get fucking life in prison for a third strike. Fucking A. But then what's happening is they fucking get contracts to these private prisons. They take the minimum security prisoners. They go out, they do the work for dollars on the fucking, penny, or pennies on the dollar. And the real unions and the real people who actually would be working for this shit lose their jobs and they don't have the contracts and shit because they can't afford to bid for them.
In the US, is the prison system creating worse criminals?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a whole nother angle to it too, where once you get out of prison,
you're stigmatized.
That's on your record. Like, it's not viewed in the U.S. as like committing a crime and then serving your time for that crime. You're not viewed as like, oh, okay, that person must be better now, or oh, that's great, they atoned for what they did. You're like forever marked, and it's impossible to like get good jobs and like anywhere that does a background check, that's going to be popping up in like tripping alarms and stuff like that. So it's really
happens like in England, that like.
Well, the system in England,
it tarnishes your record. And that.
It does, but they actually help you a lot fucking more than they do. Like, for example, in the UK, you're more likely to get support after you've served your time from being a prisoner than you are being a soldier.
Oh yeah, 100%. That's because if you want to take it. Because I know a few people have been to jail and have not took that or gone that next step. They just ended up back in jail.
I mean, my dad, he did time for tax evasion and bank fraud. He was a bit of a shithead, my dad was. He did 4 years, and when he got out, he got a job working for the local council. So they helped him do a job, and they also got him somewhere to live and stuff. And we have veterans that are living on the streets, so it's kind of a flip over here.
Yeah, and what's shitty too is like the companies that do hire felons or convicted criminals, like it doesn't matter what your felony was for. Like you could be like laundering money over, like if it's over $2,000, like say you took $2,000 from your boss, that's a felony. So therefore you're lumped in the same category as someone who shot somebody or did some sort of gun crime as far as they're concerned when they look at fucking paperwork. So like jobs will hire you, and then all they have to do is like, oh, you want to work extra hours and shit like that? Oh, you don't want? Okay, well, we're just going to call your PO and have you sent fucking back to jail for what the fuck you did.
So they don't have correctional, I'm going to use an American term, correctional facilities or prisons for different levels of crime. Because, for example, my dad's crime was it's called a white collar crime.
Yeah.
Because it's fraud. So he wasn't in with murderers and rapists and stuff. He was in with other guys that had done dodgy bank dealing. Do you know what I mean?
Well, they don't necessarily go off of the crime per se. It's off of the inmate themselves, whether or not they're a high security risk or whatever, and it depends on how long you're actually going to be in prison. Like minimum security prisons only have or county prisons say you can only be there for 2 years. After that, like, you are not allowed to be in those prisons for longer than that. So they have to be up into a higher tier prison in order to, fill out their sentences. So that's kind of like how it goes.
But Posy, that reinforces your statement of this. Say, for example, my dad had done that in America.
I'm sorry, looking at the screen here. Posy, you're really small.
It's because he's not talking. Remember the sound?
Oh, does it come up? I think also when you get close to the camera, you kind of zoom in and out weirdly. But I don't know. Sometimes it works for me. I don't know.
It puts emphasis on the person who's talking. I think we keep commenting on that, and every time we have this. Every episode so far, I think we've commented on that.
Like on the screen now, it's got me quite big. Posy is very small, and you and Bull are average.
I think it's because you're the boss of the conversation. That's why you're so big.
I mean,
I think that's how it works. I
am the boss. So what can I say?
You're the boss, mate. You're the boss. Of course, you're the boss. You're the almighty. You need to wear your crown more often, my friend.
I do.
But like, there you go. Posy got a bit bigger then. So Posy, so let's take my dad for an example. So if he'd done that crime in America, he could have had the possibility of being put alongside murderers, gangsters, drug dealers, anybody else, and then he would probably have picked up more dodgy things to do. And when he left prison, he probably would have continued doing the dodgy things.
Yeah, sure.
You learn how to be a criminal by going to jail.
Yeah. Yeah. So you learn how to be a better criminal going to jail. See, I mean, look, I'm not saying our prison system, because our prison system is also a bit of a shambles as well. It's crazy. But they do group prisoners into different categories of their crimes, and then they evaluate them while they're in there to see if they're stable enough to be in an open prison. Because we have open prisoners where they can go and work for like daytimes and stuff like that. If
we have that for like minimum security facilities, stuff like that, like what is called work release and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
We even have prison programs where you just go to prison on the weekends. Like literally, you're out during the week. You have an ankle bracelet
and all that.
Yeah, but then you get to stay at home, live out your week.
Yeah, we have that as well.
On the weekend, you go to jail. Like what the fuck?
We give that for something called ASBOs, antisocial behaviour. You see, if you go down the council estates in the UK, you'll see loads of kids sitting on their doorstep with their leg in the door, because the sensors pick up them when they leave the house.
Yeah, they've got a thing called an electronic tag.
Yeah, we have those ankle bracelets
But
and shit.
Yeah.
Does that work? Do you think that works?
No, it doesn't.
Well, it works in what sense? Like it teaches people that they shouldn't commit those crimes, or?
Yeah, do you think it teaches kids? I mean, for over here, for example, it's usually your kind of 15 to 17, 18-year-old kids that have those bracelets on their legs. Do you think it works? Do you guys think it works?
So I can tell you, for the last 2 years, I've barely left the house at all, just because of Corona.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I've necessarily been punished, but I'm also a fairly antisocial person. So that could be why. So, I mean, does it work? Probably not in that sense. Like, I'm sure it's annoying to deal with.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never dealt with it personally, but like, I can't imagine that being that much different from normal life. At least
I think in our society now, you don't really need to leave the fucking house. I mean, you can order everything online. You get your shopping to the door. You do your banking online.
But here's the thing.
Conversate.
Like, in the U.S., like, not many kids have ankle bracelets. That's the thing. Like, what ends up happening for juvenile crimes is they'll just get released on to their parents' custody, or they get put in juvie. They don't get ankle bracelets usually. What ends up happening with ankle bracelets is our people on probation for higher crimes, stuff like that, like, drug-related crimes and that type of stuff. When the prisons are overcrowded, they get released on like if you're like extra probation or some shit like that with some suspended sentences and shit. But yeah, like kids don't really.
In the US prison system, do you have psychiatric wards? Do you have like wards that like, for example, ours is Broadmoor, the biggest one in England is Broadmoor. Yeah. It's basically where we put all the
like Penhurst. If you want to talk about like scary like haunted stories and shit like that, look up Penhurst in Pennsylvania. It was a mental facility that they just closed, and they literally just opened the doors and let all the patients go.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then what they did is when they went back, like after the place was closed, and they found them still there. Like they had nowhere to go, so they created their own homeless mental health community just inside these rooms and shit like that, because they were just let go. The state stopped funding it. They lost money. And they just they just closed down. Now it's like run by the fucking National Guard. But yeah, that's where our mental health facilities go. They just get fucking released back into the wild.
So Posy, I'm assuming you know about this story as well, eh?
No, actually, I'm not familiar with this one.
Oh, this is like a local story, so it's like people in Pennsylvania and stuff like that know it, but like this is right down the street for me. So like,
if you've got situations like that where prisoners are being released into society, who the fuck is managing that? I mean, is that because it's contracted out to a contractor that just doesn't give a fuck?
Out to a state, and then they like there's like what ends up happening. I think with Penhurst is they just stopped getting funding because they lost their contract or whatever the fuck it was. So the people who worked there is like, we don't work here anymore. This isn't our fucking thing, and they left. I mean, that's a generalization, I'm sure, but like ultimately, like the place was getting shut down because they were actually abusing the patients and shit like that too. Honestly, look it up. It's a fucked up story. But even after the fact, instead of getting the patients help after them being abused and all that, they just let them go. Like they had no one watching them. Like there's rumors of them living in the sewers, like on the old underground tunnels that used to travel like with all the trains, shit like that, back in the early 1700s. Like there's homeless communities and stuff like that, and there's rumors of like some of the patients still living in those communities. Like they have like homeless tent shanties in towns and stuff like that out in our woods.
I watched a program about that, and was it underneath Las Vegas? There's like a whole like city underneath Las Vegas with like
Homeless communities and shit.
homeless communities under there, and some of those people went there to become famous, and then they just ended up on the streets, and they've just been pushed into those kind of situations.
Yeah.
Man, Jesus, it's crazy. I mean, if you think about the two comparisons to two very similar two countries which are basically based on the same rules.
Yeah.
I mean, the US and the UK, whether we like it or not, we're so fucking similar. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But at the same time, things have been spread out in different ways. So Parsi, mate, we'll go back to you, mate.
Sure.
So in your correction, how would you deal with those criminals that just aren't able to be rehabilitated? How do you think they should be dealt with?
Oh man. So I'm gonna be real honest. I don't know a ton about how it exists today. All I know is that mental health resources in the United States are extremely underfunded and not available. Like for instance,
underutilized.
Underutilized, yeah. So like for instance, if you let's say your best friend tells you, "Hey man, I've been feeling really down. I'm gonna go kill myself," and you call 911, the cops come. You know,
Okay.
it's not like it's not an ambulance. It's not like a team of like social workers or anything like that. It's the police. And
Well, here it's both.
they-
Like where we're at, it should be both.
Oh. well, it should be both, but
Yeah.
at least where I live, it's definitely not.
So is there a, because I mean you talk about contracts a lot in the US. I mean, the reason why I'm thinking about the Samaritans. Like over here, there's suicide lines and things, people that you can contact,
Yeah.
and there's
Yeah.
quite a lot to get people to get hold of if you need support. Is that there in the US? I'm guessing it is. Samaritans is quite a big thing.
Probably. I
Yeah,
know
we have
that
the suicide hotlines.
if you're employed, there's a thing called employee assistance program that everyone has, and that's kind of what that is. But I don't know what's available for people who may not be employed.
Yeah, we have a national suicide hotline. It's problem is you have to get like people on. Like it depends, like different areas. Like if I were to call, like where I'm at now, if I were to call like the national hotline, I'd get a hold of somebody and I'd talk to them because of where I'm at, generally speaking. But there are places that have an overburden of problems just in general, and like where those things, that system is connected, is failing in those like individual places. So like you'll have people who will try to get a hold of these programs that exist, but won't actually be able to get a hold of the resources that are supposed to be there. And that's one problem.
Because there's so many people that get to that level where they need to just talk to somebody, and not to have that kind of in between there, just to kind of, because if you've got nobody else to have someone like this, the Samaritans. Because I'll be honest, I've phoned the Samaritans in the past, many years ago, when I was on everything that could be bought and put into my mouth. And I got to be honest, they're fucking amazing. I mean, just to be able to talk to someone like that, even if you're not suicidal, if you're just fucking down and out.
I've got a story about them. I rang up. I was in an extremely bad way, and I was very close to wanting to kill myself. I rang them up. I told them, "Oh, sorry, we can't help you."
Really?
Yep. Put the phone down on me.
The one I rang was amazing. She sat there and spoke to me for about an hour. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. But I suppose it depends. It depends what kind of area you're in.
It depends on who answers the phone.
Yeah.
It depends who's on the fucking other line. Maybe they just heard somebody dicking around with them the whole fucking time, and he's like, I don't care anymore.
Yeah, that could have been the situation. But when I was in that place, I was just instantly like, yeah, fuck these guys.
Yeah, like with me, there was a time where I called the EAP too, and they set me up with an appointment for like 3 days later. I'm like, I'm kind of like pissed now. So like,
yeah, you have to go.
What happened though is like me getting mad at them for putting me into an appointment later. I'm like, oh, I gotta have so much to say to you in 3 fucking days. So that kind of took me out of that moment. You know what I mean?
So I can tell you the only way that I've found to reliably get help like right away in the United States, and this is just based on personal experience. I just don't know if there's anything else, which is kind of evidence that it's underfunded and underutilized and all that. But is to go to the emergency room. Like if you go to the emergency room and tell them you're suicidal, they will immediately take you in.
Yeah,
Okay.
and usually that's what, like, when you call suicide hotlines and shit like that, what they'll do is like, are you suicidal? And in certain areas, like, that will be their protocol, would be to send an ambulance to take you to the hospital. You know what I mean?
But that's
if you
nothing.
have if you have an ambulance company where you're at that does that, and if you have a fucking program that works that way properly, you know.
But that does nothing to help like someone who might be criminally insane or like in the middle of a crime of passion or just having a breakdown or anything like that. That's like the extreme end. And so to kind of like circle back to your question, I don't know that there's a lot that we do, especially in the prison system for folks like that. And I could just be uninformed, but I don't remember hearing like of much.
No, there's no incentive in the prison system to actually do it, because then they'll lose their what is the word? When people reoffend, and that rate will go down, and then they'll lose their amount of
Reoffenders.
people.
Does it
Yeah.
always have to come to money? Why does
In
the
this
incentive always have to come down to money? Because
Because
the
it's what they're making
incentive
their
isn't.
decision off of.
But the incentive isn't
Yeah.
money. It's social. It's social
Not for the people
care.
making the decisions.
Not
for
in the
people
United
making the-
States.
Yeah, when it's the people making the decisions, it's not about it to them. I mean, everybody around them's like, hey, this is what it is. And they're like, okay, that's nice for you. I'm going to go over here and make $1 billion. You go play with your dicks over here. You know, that's what it is. It's private. It's not government. It's just like, hey, you know, I'm doing business. This is what, you know, I'm allowed to do it. It's a business. Fuck you if you don't like it. You didn't
So
get into the
all
business.
prison services in the US, all of them. I'm saying this as a question more than anything else. They are all privately contracted in
No,
each state.
state,
Not all of them.
Not all
state
of them.
prisons. Federal prisons aren't. County and state prisons are.
Okay, so for a
but federal
state prison, what would that be used for? Would that be used for like? Because I'm thinking you're talking like regional small prisons used for like lower crimes, and
No,
then a
they're
state prison being a badass prison where all the nasty kids go. That's how I think about it anyway. Whether that's right or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
Doesn't
like-
it depend on like what kind of crime you commit though? Like a federal crime
it
goes to
depends-
federal prison and
Yeah. It also depends on sentencing. Also, it also depends on like whether or not who tries the case. You can have a federal crime, but if you're tried by the state, then you go to the state prison. If you're tried by the federal government, then it's a different thing. But it all depends on jurisdiction, shit like that, where the crime was committed, what one.
There was a case I saw, and you guys might know more about this than I do, because I watched a quick YouTube video. But it was 4 kids, and they were chucking stones off a highway bridge,
And it killed somebody.
and it went through the front windshield, and then the passenger died. I think it was the passenger. No, it was the dad. The dad died. And they got the death penalty. What do you guys think about that?
There's no way that stood up.
Whether they actually went all the way through and had the death penalty, but the original verdict was, I believe, the death penalty.
I don't think that would have gotten overturned, especially for a juvenile. They wouldn't have had that. They would have pushed for life, if anything, and even
Okay,
then,
I've got a question
manslaughter was
about
just
murder
life.
and kids. But I'll let you finish, Zombie.
But
Okay.
Posy,
But we
do
also
you-
got to remember, life imprisonment only meant 19 years.
yeah.
So we also got to remember when we're saying life and death penalty, whatever. It depends on where you're at. They just recently made life in prison mean 30 years recently within the last few years. But like when that you're saying like, oh, they got life, a reduced sentence, like, oh, we're pushing for the death penalty, but then the judge would downward defer it to life sentence, which would only have been 19 years for a minor.
But then in which case, why try them to go to a verdict of death penalty when they're going to go the other way?
Well, it's not a verdict. That's the sentencing thing. It's you get a verdict of guilt, and then they push for that sentence, and then they have to vote on it. The people who vote on it are the jury. The jury, which is a jury of your peers. The judge would get the chance to accept that verdict or not, and in that case, they wouldn't accept it, and they would revert it.
How do you feel about that, Posy? Though those kids.
I think regardless, I don't believe in capital punishment.
Don't believe in capital punishment.
No, not at all.
I mean, I
Um,
personally, in that situation, I don't believe in capital punishment
No,
either.
definitely not.
I don't believe in it at all. I don't think that's a good way to go.
I
I
don't
can
know what it is. Can someone explain it to me?
death
Definitely.
penalty. So they
Ah.
get the injection, or you don't hang anymore, do you, in the US?
No,
I
we
think
have
now it's the
injection
same thing.
gas.
Yes.
Well, actually, now they're trying to push to the type of gas like with kind of like nitrous oxide. So, because it's supposed to be more humane than the actual injections. But
There have been people that have survived those injections, haven't there?
yep, and they've actually gotten off for it. They've
Yeah.
actually, they've been injected and they survived, and therefore they cannot be executed again and had to be set free. It was a guy who committed like multiple murders and got the death sentence and got set free because he survived the death penalty, and anything after that would be considered a cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah. There was a guy that survived hanging in the UK, and he was set free as well, but many years ago, because we probably got rid of hanging in the 60s.
Yeah.
But how do you
We just
think
got rid
that-
of firing squad.
Fucking hell, man, firing squad. That's a bit
Yeah.
brutal, isn't it? Jesus
Well,
Christ.
no, what it is in Utah, it was still illegal. Like they stopped doing it and had never done it for like years. But what happened was a guy who was a Mormon, according to the religious belief, I guess, if you die and your blood touches the ground, your sins are forgiven. So he's
Okay.
like, I want to, be executed by firing squad. So that way he would bleed and, based on his religion, belief would go to heaven. And they're like, no.
So going back to those kids, Bozzy, how do you think it should have been dealt with, and how do you think it's going to be dealt with?
Man, I mean, I don't know how it's going to be dealt with, but man, what I would think is that I guess it's hard to answer because I don't know the details of it. Like, are they truly malicious kids who do this shit all the time and have caused harm to others, or are they just kids who got caught up in a moment and were doing something stupid that led to something tragic? You know what I mean?
As far as I can understand, it was just a group of kids doing something stupid that they shouldn't have done. They've never done it before. It just happened that one time they killed somebody by doing it.
I mean, I think that's a prime example of why reform is needed in the prison system, because they should absolutely be up for that. You know what I mean? Like, stupidity is not an excuse.
No, definitely not. I think they should be reformed. But also the fact, in that kind of situation, you're a 15-year-old kid fucking around. Now, if I don't know, in my situation, if I think back when I was 15, if I knew I'd done that, that would haunt me for the rest of my fucking life.
That's another thing, is they're gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah,
forever.
because that's not. I mean, if I go out and I buy a gun and I kill somebody, not that I can buy a gun, but you know what I mean. If I do that, I've premeditated that. I've already clicked it over in my head. That kid who chucked that brick off that thing was being a dumbass, but he wasn't thinking it's going to kill anybody. So
You also think, like, sentencing in the U.S., like, if you went out and got a gun and did that, you would be mandatory the rest of your life in prison, too. There would be no question off of that one. Like, it's
no, but I'm not
mandatory.
saying that. I'm not saying that. But if I went physically out to kill somebody, I would have already mentally processed that. So it would be like, okay, I'm going to kill somebody. I'm going to go to prison because I killed somebody. But if I was pissing around and I accidentally killed somebody,
No, you can't talk.
you would. I think my as a 15-year-old kid, that would haunt me until
Don't you talk.
forever.
You're going to, aren't you?
And that might be for me, myself anyway. That would be punishment enough. I mean, obviously, you need to go through the prison system and all that kind of stuff. But I think
part of the prison system, like part of you going through that system, should be reforming, like, from that mental, like, that idea of like, oh shit, I did this. That should be part of the, while you're in prison, reforming that, fixing that up.
Yeah.
No,
I think part of reform is understanding what you've done. Absolutely. Like, and why it's wrong, and how to avoid doing things like that in the future. I think that just throwing someone behind bars for 10 years or whatever time they end up getting, and expecting any good to come out of that is unreasonable. Like, it's just, it won't.
No, and when the people who are putting them in, the control of, are the people who are there just to house. That's all the prison people. What the hell would you call them? Like the board and shit, or like whatever. The people who run the prisons, all they're there for is to keep them in there. It's not their job to reform them. That's the state's business. So they're not going to put these programs in place. You have to actually push for them and actually look for them. And they get off by just like, oh no, it's not our problem.
Do you think the death penalty across the US will be abolished or got rid of at some point?
Not until Texas secedes.
Yeah, it depends on who's in charge. But I would hope that it would, because I think that, in my opinion, the death penalty is a very straightforward but not well thought out answer to a common problem. And it doesn't actually accomplish anything. Like even if you're of the mind that someone took a life so they deserve to have theirs taken as punishment, isn't a worse punishment to spend the rest of your life in one of those prisons? Like,
Not if
I feel like
so. Those people actually like it. It's their home.
I mean,
You know,
maybe
to them, yeah.
but
Some of them, it's a
that's
better life in there.
that may
Some
be
people
true in
actually
some
commit
cases.
So
these
would
crimes
you
in order
think,
to get
like-
prison time because they miss it. You know, they get what is it called? Indoctrinated. They get indoctrinated into the system. Just think of Shawshank Redemption. They had what's his name, Blue, or
Yeah, the old guy.
Brooks. That was like an example of it. That the life is so used to being in the prison system that outside reality doesn't fit their world. So it's like, if you're going to throw kids in jail and micromanage them for their entire developmental life, you're going to have to manage them for their entire adult life, because that's how they learn to live in the system.
Yeah, it's kind of like Old Boy, that movie a little bit. I feel like is what you're talking about. Have you guys seen that one?
No.
It's really interesting. It's Josh Brolin, and he gets kidnapped and confined to a room for like years, like 20 years, and then he gets out and discovers why, and his mind breaks, and he just goes back and he pays them to reconfine him for the rest of his life.
Really?
It's a really good movie.
What film's that?
Old Boy.
Oh boy.
It rings a bell. I've definitely heard of it, but I don't think I've seen it.
And it's a little bit older, so hopefully that's not an inappropriate spoiler
2003.
thing. Yeah.
2003.
Oh wait, no, that's the original one.
2013. American neo-noir action thriller directed by Spike Lee. Okay. Box office 5.2 million. That's not much, is it? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So you were against the death penalty across the board, and I understand that, and I
Well, I have a
respect that.
question about murder and stuff and kids, right? So, if
Okay.
say if I go out and kill someone, right, and then the
Jeez, man.
kid,
We've got the motorway in here.
Hang on. Yeah, 1 second.
the kid goes and does the same thing, should they get the same
missed the-
punishment as me?
I missed the
Missed
first
the
bit,
first
mate.
part.
Right. So, I've gone out and I've killed someone, and a kid does exactly the same thing. We both get caught. Should a child get the same punishment as me for killing that person?
It depends on the intent.
I don't think so.
We just both the intent was we just wanted to kill someone.
I don't think they should have the same punishment. Reason being is the same reason kids can't buy tobacco or alcohol or vote, and it's because they don't have full reasoning capability developed yet.
It also depends on what age you're classifying as a kid too.
Under the age of 15.
Under that age, then I kind of agree with him on that. But around 16, I mean, at the very least 16, not to fucking kill people. I mean,
I kind of hope before that my 5-year-old knows not to kill people.
Well,
yeah, but I understand
knowing
the idea of
situations
the
is different.
because there's also different concepts of the finality of it. Under a certain age, the developmental aspect of the brain, they don't understand that this is permanent. So young children, I can understand if a 7-year-old goes out and kills a 5-year-old because I wanted to see what it was like. Then it's an entirely different story than if a 16-year-old beat to death one of his friends because he pissed me off and I didn't realize think about it.
Well, for example, Jamie Bolger. I don't know whether you guys have heard of Jamie Bolger, but he was a 4-year-old kid that was kidnapped by 2 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, were they? They were young. They were around about 10 years old, I think they were. But they brutally killed him. They put him on a train track. He got his body cut in half. They did many things I didn't want to talk about. But they were reformed. They went through reform. They had open prisons. They did many things to those kids, and they helped them out.
10-year-old boys.
Two 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
They even gave them, when they were released
Go
at
on.
the age of 24,
You're gonna go on.
they were given anonymity, they were given new identities, and they were given £1 million each and sent to Australia, so that they wouldn't, because basically if they got released in the UK, they'd have been dead within the week. That's what would have happened. But they came back. And the one got
Why?
arrested and is in prison now, as a paedophile. Now those guys had everything. They had everything put on a plate because they were only 10 years old. So they're obviously in like open prisons. They were in care. A care
Yeah, so
prison.
they really didn't see the punishment in what they did. They apparently, it looks like they saw, like, oh look, I did this
They
bad
saw
thing.
fame. They saw
Yeah, and
fame,
I got rich for it.
and they
like,
made money off that fame.
So they didn't like. And one more thing, like, I never liked smacking kids and like spanking them, but like I always look at why was it different when my grandparents did it to my parents as opposed to when my parents did it to me.
See,
It's like,
hearing
and
that
if my parents
story
did-
when I was a kid, and I was only 15 at the time. Even I wanted to kill them kids.
I don't think that's so. I don't. Even though our opinions differ, I don't think that is an unreasonable reaction to that situation. You know what I mean? Like,
But also,
even hearing that,
but
I would
having-
want to kill them. But the difference is would I do that? Would I act on it? Or
but we also got to think:
would
are
I-
you comparing what they did? Because like, remember, they did a lot of extremely fucked up things. So there's a comparison between someone who does a lot of completely fucked up things, not having that switch in their brain working, as opposed to someone who goes out and pushes a friend down a hill and is like, oh shit, I killed him.
That's
I did.
different. That's an accident. But these two
Yeah,
kids,
but like,
I think,
yeah,
I
they
think
went
the
out
one
and
was
specifically did.
more vicious than the other one. The other one kind of went along for his peer pressure. I can't remember their names, but one of them was more of an arsehole than the other one, basically.
Yeah,
It didn't work, mate.
yeah, but
is
that
the
was, you
honest
gotta remember,
truth.
like, that sounds like a different case than like a friend like hitting somebody in the head with a hammer, be like, oh crap, I didn't think of it, I just got mad and did it.
No, but I'm
Robert-
talking
As
about
opposed to someone
Robert
who-
Thompson and John Venables. 12th of February, all this happened, 1993.
so
They went-
I guess. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say they went through rehabilitation. They were brought up. They were given everything they needed to. They had a stable environment, but they still went on to do crimes after they left, and it was around children.
I guess
Well,
there's no
so-
woman.
So I guess the question is, maybe it didn't work, and because it didn't, they're now back in prison, which is exactly how it should function, right?
Yeah.
But does that mean we just shouldn't have tried? And it's more of a moral question. You know what I mean? Like, just because someone commits a horrendous act, does that mean that we have to commit a horrendous act against them to make it right? Or should we try and reform them, and part of that reform be understanding and restitution and all that sort of stuff? It's like that's one of those kind of extreme cases where sure, maybe it didn't work, but still the things that need to be done are being done.
They're in place. They
Yeah.
should be working as they should be.
Well,
And I guess the question is like, because that didn't work, does that mean we shouldn't try?
we should try.
In my Posy, in my head, right at the back here, it's saying no, we should fucking brutally kill them because they're bastards. But at the front of my head, I'm saying, yeah, you've probably got a point. We should try.
We should
but-
try, but sometimes people are just fucking broken.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah,
people are just
and-
broken. In their case, they were the broken ones. So they're
And
not
in
the
this
example.
and in this case, they're back in jail, right? So
Yeah.
Well,
they're
apparently
being tried.
one, his alias, this is allegedly, is Dante Arthurs, who was a convicted murderer of an 8-year-old.
Oh, so he got arrested again for somebody
yeah.
killing another kid.
But this is
I d-
allegedly.
I knew one of them got done for child pornography. I think that was the evil, the nastier of the two. Not that either of them are not nasty, but
I
Yeah.
don't know if this is the same sort of situation, but like them kids that you were talking about, well, me and Ball are talking about, they went and did crimes again. Is it already drilled in, or is there something already wrong with them kids?
Predisposed. That's what I was saying. That was my point. Like, there's something wrong with them at that point. You know, if because like I'm saying, like it's different going through what they did and actually torturing somebody into that, because then they lack that empathy trigger in the brain that makes them realize, oh, what I'm doing is hurting somebody. But when you have a
Personally,
kid who acts out, they always feel remorse at some point.
yeah, they
You know,
never did. They never showed any
Yeah,
remorse because they
like
came out made a fortune out of it. I agree with you, Posy. I agree with you, Zombie. But I think looking at it from a different point of view now, you guys have said that. I think there was too much empathy. I don't think they looked into the psychological issues that those kids had. I think they treated them as children and
Mhm.
tried to bring them up in like a wholesome environment. But there was more to it than that. There was
Yeah,
a psychological
did.
break somewhere.
Yeah, they didn't actually
Entirely
emphasize.
possible.
Like they didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't actually like. They tried like oh, let's forget what happened, and then work better towards the future. When like you did this, you're not going to forget you did it. You know what I mean? They ignored it. It's like, oh yeah, that was bad. Now let's do good. And then they gave them all these good things. It's like, oh, I did that, and this is the result of me doing that. You know, they obviously lacked empathy themselves, or else they wouldn't have gone to the extent that they did to do what they did. And when they got rewarded for it, all that did was reinforce the negative ideas that they had already in their brains. I mean, shit, if you gave me $1 million and sent me on my own way to a brand new life somewhere and like all that shit after doing all they did, like, what the fuck would you expect?
Yeah, you'd think, oh my God, that was obviously a good thing to do, so I'm
Yeah.
going to continue doing it.
Yeah, because after then what happens is like they live a nice life, you know, for so long they don't do anything wrong. That $1 million, because they have no real life skills, is going to run out eventually. What are they going to do? Let me see. How do I get $1 million again? I'll just fucking hit people in the head with an axe.
Okay, so let's change the subject. 'Cause I'm getting quite upset about that. I hate that Jamie Bolger story because my dad was in. He told me lots of stories when he came out of the nick about because he spoke to one of the people that were worked on it or something, and he did some of the stuff they did to that little kid wasn't even put in the newspaper. I think it has been now because it's years later. I mean, that's an extreme fucking case. That's two little
Yeah.
kids brutally
Yeah.
murdering and torturing a little kid, an even littler kid. I've completely gone off what I was going to say now because my head's just on that now.
Oh,
But I
wifey,
can.
all right, shaggers.
I think the whole of
That's good.
society.
Thank you, well, wifey, for the 100 bitties.
Hello, hello, Ghost. Hey, they're doing wifey. You all right? I think the whole of British society, and I'm not speaking for everybody because I don't know, but a good percentage of the people in Britain at that time, when they heard that story about Jamie Bolger, felt the same as I do thinking about it now. They were disgusted that I think it was the shock of those two kids being able to do something like that. But it's also the fact that they did it to this little baby, this 4-year-old baby, which it is a baby. And of course, we lived in a society back then in the 80s that we used to leave our front doors open. 90% of we used to have a key. We used to put our key on the porch. I mean, I lived like that. And people used to have a cord that used to pull the key through the letterbox so you can unlock the door.
Yeah.
It was
Like that.
Everyone did it.
Now.
But
yeah,
it
everyone
kind
did
of
it, but you know,
it
you're
stopped.
hiding your keys. You're hiding your key in a place that you know everybody's going to look if they wanted to get in your house.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that I was hiding it really all that much. It was
But
just keeping the key there so when you forgot it.
It destroyed society. It destroyed a lot of things that we got used to being able to do that. And also when we talk about the Dunblane massacre, which was one of the only school shootings we've had in the UK, where the paedophile shot and killed 34 children and injured 15 more, I think it was.
Even
that changed.
CCTV images of him taken is horrific.
Yeah, that changed our gun laws. So handguns were completely illegal across the board. Because before that, you could have them if you were a collector or if you did shooting, and he was a shooting instructor, I believe, or something like that. He had some deal with guns.
Wait. So you mean the solution to school shootings isn't more guns?
No, it's not. It's not.
That's what they say here.
I mean, like for example, like in the UK, we have statistically, because we're smaller, more beatings to death than the US has shootings to death. So there is definite deaths.
Guns are just the tools in which they use to do it.
Yeah.
It's just
if they're going to do it, they're going to do it.
If you've got a gun, it's a reactional thing. You have a gun, so you are going to use it in that situation. Like in the UK, we have fists, and that's what we use.
You're talking the difference though. Like 90% of our gun violence is reactionary on the street and shit like that. Well, 90% of the guns are illegal too in the first place. So having them be illegal, the law's already there. So the guns are fucking there. The laws aren't preventing it. Secondly, the ones when it comes to school shootings, that's premeditated, and there's planning involved. You know what I mean? That's not just oh, I found a gun, I'm just gonna randomly start
If you
shooting.
have guns that normal people in everyday society can buy, that means normal people in everyday society are going to shoot guns, which means more people are going to killed by guns.
This is true, 100% true that the more guns are in a place, the more gun violence there will be. There is data to back that up. I mean, you can't have a school shooting without guns.
No.
But you're right. On the other hand, that it's too late to do anything like get rid of all the guns here because everybody has them and they're legal or illegal.
It would be. It'll take a very long time to go to each individual's house to get all the guns.
But you'd have to go to a house to get guns that you don't know are actually there. So you'd have to trust the person who has the illegal gun to say, "Yeah, there's an illegal gun here. Take it."
Right.
And that's not
most shootings in the US. Are they illegal guns or are they legal guns?
No, most shootings, the ones that happen 90% of the time are in areas where it's either drug related or crime related in the first place. And 90% of those guns are illegal guns. Now, when it comes to school shootings and stuff like that, those are generally legally bought guns, either modified or they're just someone snapped and shouldn't have had access to it or some shit like that. We had the one elementary school shooting where it was a teacher's son. I forget what the name of it was, but he shouldn't have had access to guns in the first place because he was mentally unstable to begin with. There was the one that just happened in Oxford school shooting. That kid should not have had access to a gun. The parents fucking bought it for him and just left it out for him to get access to. You know what I mean? These are mentally unstable people being left alone with fucking firearms because it's fucking negligence. And that's why they're actually trying the parents of that.
Before anyone makes a comment, we have a comment in the chat. I remember when they had a knife amnesty in the UK. Amnesty. Not sure that would work in the US with guns or.
Is that where people could go turn in a knife to the police, no questions asked?
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So.
Did they have one in the US? I remember seeing something about that.
There was something like that, and it led to some sort of scandal. I don't know the details, but I doubt that would work because the people who have guns are too scared to turn them in because of people who have guns who shouldn't have guns, who won't turn them in. You know what I mean? It's this weird conundrum that we're in, where guns are just fucking everywhere, and we got to find a way to deal with it.
See, they're kind of going against what Zombie was saying, what I was saying, to be honest, to a certain degree. You can get guns in the UK. You can get illegal guns. I mean, it's easier to fucking buy an Uzi up in Manchester as it is to go and buy a shotgun that you're going to use on your farm down in. They are there. They're there. Mm-hmm. So illegal guns are on the street, but we don't. It's not.
We need to work on people not using them.
Yeah.
We need to work on a society where a person gets the idea, hey, I'm going to pick up this gun and tomorrow I'm going to use it. There's an entire gap between the time you decide to do something and the time you actually execute that plan that you should be able to come to a better sense for some reason, somehow. And if your society has gotten to the point where you're to the breaking point that's the only solution that you see, then there's a fucking problem there.
But taking the guns away from them, you mean?
Well, I mean, taking the guns isn't going to work. You need to take the reason that they're using them.
Yeah.
You need to create a better world.
That's exactly what I was saying last time we were talking.
Canada has more guns than any fucking where else. They just have less gun violence.
That's just
why is that?
Nice people. Well, that's all it
is. Yeah.
But why is that?
They just don't use them. It's just not the same.
Do you think is it a social thing? Is it a thing in America that you have more shootings because is it fear? Is it protection? I mean, is it gangs? Well, what is it? I mean,
statistically speaking, I think it was last time I looked. This was 10 years ago. I looked this shit over. It was 90% of gun violence was inner city gang related, and it wasn't crimes of passion or stuff like that, or you would think of the stuff that you see on the news. It was just two rival, gangs in certain areas having basically street wars. and then that boosted the numbers, and that's what everyone's looking at. But they're pointing their finger at like, oh, there's this school shooting where this guy had this illegal gun. We need to outlaw these guns, but we're not actually fixing the fucking areas where people are using the guns against each other because they're ignoring it.
I'm gonna try and find some statistics on that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Ghost has got. He's blaming you, Pussy, man. I've seen your Pussy gun violence on Doom. Yeah.
Well, that is...
apparently, there was also a gun shop next to him on the high street, next to my.
But there always was in my town as well. I don't know whether still they haven't been town in ages. When we talk about a gun shop, we mean air pistols, shotguns. I mean, my dad had a 2.2, which is fucking nothing basically in comparison to American guns. It was like a 2.2 rifle that he used to shoot, but it wasn't anything severe. I mean, my dad
got shot in the ass with a 2.2 rifle. I think it was just like an air gun or something like that. It wasn't an actual gun, but he still got the mark on his ass.
Fucking hurts, mate.
Oh, fucking.
We used to play. Do you remember? Oh, fucking hell. Oh man, what was it? What's that game called? And it doesn't matter. Basically, it's like hide and seek, but we used to do it with gat guns, and they were like little dart guns. And if you get shot in the ass or in the leg with the dart gun, you were out. But that was just different times, man.
Well, you know what? These statistics, it's kind of funny because it's kind of misleading if you don't look at it from a specific angle. Gun violence is more predominant the more packed cities are, and like the more the larger populations. So it makes it look disproportionate that like, oh, all this violence is happening in these areas, but when there's like really just more people per capita.
I mean, but the thing that like us British people do looking over in America, I mean, I've seen the numbers as well. I mean, our cities have more people in them. They're much more compact. I mean, 10 million in London. You get a city like Detroit, it's like 3 million. I know there's a shooting in Birmingham. So a girl got shot outside a nightclub with an AK-47. It happens. It does happen. But you see,
it's the frequency.
It's one, and I can remember it. It was sometime in the 90s. But do you think? I mean, I don't remember hearing anything about American gun crime until about the late 90s, 95, 96. Now, this is probably going to sound like a proper boomer question, right? So don't judge me or anything. But do you think the media from the 90s up until maybe the early 2000s built this idea of crime and guns and the idea of being cool if you've got a gun? Because like in the 90s, there were a lot of like American gang movies, like Boys in the Hood, that kind of thing. That idea of sticking a gun down your waist belt kind of thing.
Well, no, those movies were modeled off of what America was like, and wasn't it? Like that's how.
But do you not think that exacerbated the situation? So you've got a problem. So you've got a shitty problem. What's the worst thing you can do about it? Glorify it and make it look cool. That's not a good thing to do, is it?
I don't know if I would say those movies really glorify it.
The intent wasn't to glorify it, I don't think. It was kind of like meant documentary-ish stuff, like not documentary. More of
but they weren't though, really, were they? They were glorifying the idea of crime being a good thing, even though it was a dangerous and fucking crazy thing. It to a certain degree it did glorify it.
Let me take that question back a step, because I don't believe that the media or that media that people can consume can be blamed for those sorts of violent things.
Sometimes,
like at all. That's
in certain
essentially
situations,
like you.
Yes.
Maybe on an individual basis, maybe one guy saw a movie and thought it was cool and reenacted it. You know what I mean? But like as a general statement, you can't go out and then say things like playing Doom makes someone a violent person or more predisposed to shoot somebody. No. That's kind of the same type of arguments like they've used for Columbine and stuff.
Individual person.
Right, but as a general rule, that's not something that really happens.
See, but Doom, let's use Doom as an example. A Doom takes you away from the situation. It's not. You can't link it to your life around you. You're not going to go around and shoot zombies.
But here's the thing: those movies didn't glorify the situation. The situation was already being glorified. The fact that the movies existed just existed because they were already glorifying it. So the movies themselves were inconsequential. It was just the fact that that's just what was going on.
Okay.
So, hey, real quick, I did find a statistic, and it's actually that most of the gun violence in the U.S. is suicide.
Okay, if you look at it that way, yeah. I
most deaths involving guns. Deaths involving guns is what I'm looking at.
But I mean,
I found a statistic. This is just a fun little joke. About 50% of people don't know who Batman is.
What? 50%. Oh, I got you. Nah, I like it. Wap wap wap.
The thing is, we have shootings in our town all the time. Not all the time, but like we have the town webpage on Facebook, and it's like,
right back.
Is this fireworks or gunshots? We have to like determine like, oh, is somebody shooting at somebody or is somebody setting off fireworks? So.
But do you not think it was bad of those people to produce those movies that glorify gang crime? I think it is. I think I'm talking to myself, aren't I, at the moment?
No,
so
I'm
might as
listening.
well. I just.
Okay.
Doom is class, I suppose, if you think so. I had a spud gun and a Super Psycho 500. I had a spud gun. Those things could be vicious at short range. They could give you a proper bruise. Them spud guns could.
I have a clock.
We had spitballs at school. You know, you used to go for the tube.
Do you not remember shit piping?
No. What was that?
Right. You know the pipes that you get on the houses, like the drain pipes?
Yeah.
Right. Well, you pull them off the houses. Well, in my area, there was a lot of old houses that were getting knocked down. So you should take that, chuck it in the ground, tap it a little bit so it would come out, and then just chuck it at each other. They hurt. They did hurt a lot.
Oh, like a fucking slingshot kind of thing.
Yeah, but it was in a pipe, so we called it a shit pipe because it was attached to obviously to the shit thing.
So going back to the glorification, my idea of this glorification. So, do you not think that having a situation which was already being glorified by the society around it, and then making movies off that kind of did glorify it a little bit, do you not think that could have had effect on later generations?
Yes.
In the gun crime idea?
I don't think so. I think that to make that argument, you have to say that the majority of people are incapable of distinguishing reality and fiction.
The majority of people are whatever the words you just said there. I personally believe, yes, like media. Sorry,
that actually. So, like lately, I've been coming to have a lot of doubts about the overall intelligence of the human race. So
lately,
maybe
I've been doing that for years, mate. But go on. Sorry.
No, I mean I've always had my doubts, but the past couple of years have been extraordinary.
Yeah. Well, here's my thing: if they didn't like it, if it wasn't already happening, they wouldn't have liked those movies, and they wouldn't have been a success. You know what I mean? They wouldn't have succeeded if that wasn't. So I think it's the other way around. Those movies succeeded because it was showing what was relatable to the people, not causing them to do it. It was just what was happening, so they were related to it. That's why they succeeded.
Go on, Posy. Finish what you're gonna say, mate.
Oh, I was just saying. Maybe you do have a point. Like maybe that is a thing now, but
it is. Go on, Posy. You finish and then I'll have my little rant.
I'm just saying. Like the studies that I know of, were not necessarily recent, but were more like around the time when that was being proposed, when like video games and stuff were causing murder, have shown no link between violent media and violent action between people. But maybe it's time we do them again. Who knows?
See, I don't think it's the actual media, like as far as like the games. I don't think it's playing video games that does it.
I don't think it's the media at all. I think it's people's mindsets.
Yeah,
they see that movie and they want to link to it. And maybe before they even saw that movie, they were thinking about being a gangster and walking around with a gun in their belt. But
it's like lately. Well, actually, probably when the game came out itself, Grand Theft Auto, a lot of crime went up because of that game. It's obviously games and movies are a different thing altogether.
Was there anything around that to say that it did?
I don't know. I've probably heard something on the news, but someone please correct me if I'm wrong.
There was a crime that was recently happened. I don't know whether it was in the UK. I think it might have been. But basically, the way the news portrayed it was that it was like a Grand Theft Auto scene.
Well, do you know what happens is one person does it, like one person, and they blame it themselves. It's one person who does it, and then the news Like so many different outlets write it, so you see it everywhere. So if you're seeing it everywhere, it has to be prolific.
I'm looking it up right now, and it's the studies that have been done show no increase between Grand Theft Auto and an increase in crime.
Because one person does one crime and they say, "Oh, I thought it was." Yeah, there was recently.
Probably just one or two people. And
there was one recently. There's a guy who got arrested on crystal meth, who was driving on street corners and shit like that, who said he thought he was playing the video game while he was doing it.
Yeah, that was it. I saw that. I think that's what Almighty's talking about. It was a news report, and the reporter said it looked like a scene from Grand Theft Auto because he was kind of knocking people, ripping them out of their cars, and jumping in the car and driving off. I don't think it was basically saying that the game was the problem. I think
but someone grabs onto that and they take off, and then like Mothers of America, they turn into like, "Oh no, we need to protect the children."
Personally, no, I don't think that media would cause someone to do that.
I'm 50-50 on that because media does have an effect on a lot of things. Like music is terrible for it. 100% music is terrible for influencing people. So why does it have the same effect on movies?
But because music influence is different, though, that causes an emotional reaction. That doesn't tell you to do something bad. It gives you that adrenaline rush that gives you energy. The reaction you use that energy towards is yourself. Like you choose what you use that aggression towards. You know what I mean? That's your personal choice to be aggressive. The music is what gives you that chemical response to make you aggressive.
I don't think that the problem is the media, whether it be music, video games, movies, or whatever. I think the problem is the individual who decides to commit the act based on hearing that is an idiot.
Yeah,
like that's what the problem. It's not.
Oh yeah, 100%.
We live in a society where it says "Do not drink" on the side of bleach, mate.
Yeah. Do you know those car windows? There's things you put inside the car window to stop the sun from heating it up. It says, "Do not operate vehicle with this in place." Like you have to cover the entire windshield.
I fucking love American cars. I would draw in South Africa. We all had American cars, and everything's got a label on it. I fucking love it. It's just like window wipers, and rear view mirror. And I love the one that I loved the best was in the rear view, like in the side mirror. It said, "Things will look closer than they appear in this," and you're like, "Fucking mirror."
They have to make it rhyme. Did you know they have to make it rhyme? It says, "Objects in mirror are closer than they appear."
Yeah.
They did that on purpose. They did that on purpose so that people will read it and remember it because it rhymes.
I mean, we got our fair share of thick people over here. Don't worry about that, mate. I'm not saying that, but I was just like, wow, that's cool. Everything's labeled.
Yeah, we came from over there, so it's your fault.
We can actually take some of the blame.
I'm an immigrant, so I'm all right. My blood's all over the place. We're all fucking immigrants. It don't matter, mate. Yeah. You know, I think this is
your fault there. Gross has commented.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
I have to say, after chainsawing a few demons in Doom, I never have the urge to go out in public and do it. It's all to do with that person's mental.
I think the point I was trying to make, just to clarify, I don't think media itself, I don't think video games, I don't think movies are the issue. The only thing I think is when you can grasp a point of reality. So if I was an inner city kid, you know, growing up around people who were criminals, who were gangsters, and then I watched that on a film, on a movie, I think that would kind of enforce the idea in my head a little bit more. I think I'd have to be in a situation where it is around me at the time. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
You'd have to see it. Like it's like you're talking about like visual stimulus. Like I have to see this to believe it, and then since I'm seeing this here and seeing it here, then it has to be true type thing. Like I wouldn't believe this if it wasn't for the fact that I'm seeing it over here too.
I think that in that situation, it's still not the media. It's the failing of the kid's parents to like prepare him for the world. If that's his thought after seeing those movies, you know what I mean?
But the honest truth is, when I play a video game, I don't consider myself being in the video game. Do you hear me say that then? Video game. But when I watch a movie, I put myself in the situation. For example, if I watch the Cray brothers, I fucking love the Cray brothers, and they're nasty convicted criminals who were fucking murdering people years ago. But I'm in that story. I'm like, they're fucking cool. It's like the Peaky Blinders in the UK. Everybody wants to be a fucking Peaky Blinder, but they were murderers. Do you see what I mean?
They want the positive connotations that come along with the term. But like what you're saying is you emulate with them and that sort of thing like that. You can put yourself in it so you emulate with that character.
But in a video game, I don't. I take the skill aspect of the thing.
I don't know, man. I would say I don't think they want to be murderers. I think they just want to have the
that rush
the fame and the fortune and all the kind of other bits that come along with it.
Mm-hmm.
Right, basically what they're seeing on the TV, but that doesn't mean they want all the status of those characters, right? They want the I don't know what I'm trying to say. The
hype.
They want the energy, right?
They want the clout.
They would never go commit the murder that it took to get that.
I'll be like, I'm real, homie. First step.
Right, so I've just thought there, right? Obviously, you talked about Peaky Blinders, and they don't show half of what they actually got up to. They did the same with...
They even speak with a Brummy fucking accent, which is fucking disrespectful to the West Midlander in me, that is.
They also did the same with... what film is it? The singing film. This is Me film. Like, they did not show half of the thing what that guy got up to. Like the circus film, what is it called? The singing film.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, Ball said, right, the circus film, it's a big film that's out with Hugh Jackman in it and Zac Efron.
Okay.
Circus film?
Yeah.
That was just a weird way of describing a movie I've never heard of. It's the circus film with the singing in This Is Me.
Well, it has singing.
Yeah.
Madagascar.
The Greatest Showman.
The Greatest Showman.
That's based on a pure wanker. Like, he was a dick. Like, he raped...
A lot of things are.
Yeah, 1 minute, I'm busy. He raped the bearded woman. And he did a lot more shit, but they didn't portray that. So do you think that the fact that they're doing that and people are walking around liking these sort of people, that people are letting arseholes become leaders? I don't even know what the question was.
Yeah, it's the Richie Valley effect.
What you're trying to say is that these characters are glorified to be something that they basically weren't. It's like taking a Hitler, and putting him in a love story with Greta or whatever her name was, the one he set on fire with petrol.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Making that into a love
story.
You know,
You're kind of talking about like whitewashing, right? Like
to a certain degree, yeah.
I think it's called the Richie Valley effect, or Richie Valens effect. It's a thing that when popular TV and like media and stuff like that, what they do is they only print certain aspects of it because that's what's popular and that's what sells. And it's called the Richie Valley effect because of one of his characters in one of his movies. Who Shot Richie Valley or whatever. It's one with Billy the Kid. Like he plays like Who Shot Billy the Kid or some shit like that. I forget exactly what it is. But at the end of it, it's like when the fact becomes fiction, print the fiction, or like when the fiction becomes, story. Like that's what you print.
I think Billy the Kid was cool, but the reason why I think Billy the Kid was cool because of Young Guns in 1991.
Thanks for
fucking amazing
Dark.
Movie. But they do. I mean, like the Cray brothers, the Cray twins brothers, the Cray brothers. The Tom Hardy did a movie not too long ago. But it did glorify the history of them and gives those brothers, the new generation, a look at them that possibly isn't 100% correctly. They were gentlemen, but they were 60s bled gents, and they did some nasty stuff. But that element's not portrayed in the movie. So you see all the lovely glorified posh bits, but all the nasty stuff is kind of swept under the carpet.
I kind of think I understand where you're going with this, and I think you have a point. Not necessarily when it comes to like making people commit acts of violence, but maybe it is important that this whole based on a true story thing, that we do.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not such a good idea anymore. Because I feel like the lines between reality and fantasy are kind of blurring a little bit, like for people in the real world.
Because but there's an example in my head. I mean, the Cray brothers is one example, but the Ted Bundy film. I felt sorry for him when they were killing him in the movie.
Well, okay, I was wrong about the name of that effect thing that I was talking about. It was from the movie Who Shot Liberty Valance. And the quote of the show was, when the legend becomes fact, print the legend.
Yeah.
And what it is when the glorified version of the story becomes what people know, that's what you gravitate towards, and that's what becomes the story. And like the deviation from that, creates a rift that no one enjoys or whatever. So that's what ends up happening is with these people, like they print the most positive or whatever of it that, I don't know, the media affects it.
So with that in your mind now, Posy, I mean, looking at from my point of view, do you believe it has had some effect on people doing certain crimes?
No. I would still say no to that, but what I think it might be affecting is people's understanding of actual historical things. Like the example that you used about putting Hitler in a love story or whatever, like that's something that could actually happen. And like it may be a joke now, but maybe in 5 years, like people won't understand that.
The Dictator, I think it's called, with what's his name? The other guy with the mustache, like him.
You're as good as describe it as I am.
The other guy
there's only two.
with a mustache like Hitler.
Yeah,
but no, that's. Two. I mean, I think what you're describing kind of leads to like whitewashing, right? Like that's essentially the effect that would happen.
Yeah.
One of the most famous speeches of all time was that character. What's his name?
Sacha Baron Cohen.
No, he's over back in the 1950s.
Oh, Charlie Chaplin.
40s. Yes, him.
The dictator speech.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it was. He emulated or pretended to be this, Hitler at the time, mocking him the whole time. But at the very end, had this really moving speech where, if you looked at this dictator, like, wow. But then again, that was before they knew of the Holocaust and everything that was going on completely, because that was like back in the early 1940s when he did that, didn't he? Or was that after?
Yeah, it was. I think it was it was just when talkies came out, wasn't it? So it was probably like late 30s. So it was when Hitler was there, and people were still looking at Hitler like, as in, someone's a bit dodgy with that bloke. So that's what they kind of did it for.
Yeah, before they actually.
But that never glorified it. That was more like.
No, I'm talking about like if that happened today. Like, let's say in a week a movie came out that was like Hitler the comedy or whatever. Like, and
I've seen a couple
totally misrepresented everything that actually happened. Like in enough time, that could actually become how people understand those historical events.
Yeah,
and I think that is actually
like a lot
really
of people
dangerous.
will look at a movie and be like, "Oh, that's historically correct."
It's based on a true story, so it must have happened.
Or they just won't ever, or they just won't ever hear what actually happened,
or they'll hear both and they'll be like, "Well, I have a conspiracy theory about this. I don't trust that people, so maybe they're lying, and then this is the true story."
It's like the Ed Gein situation. Sorry about that. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The house is based on Ed Gein's house. But everyone seems to think that the whole story is based off how he killed people.
Yeah, no, it's not at all.
And it's not. No, it's not.
No, then there's the idea, like with Charles Manson, everyone's like, "Oh, he never murdered anybody, and that's why he got supporters and shit like that." Like, "Oh, he never killed anyone," but like, no, he was involved. No, well, he never physically did it, but he was involved. He did enough.
He mentally did it, technically.
Well, first degree, for first degree murder charge, if you're involved in any act of the planning phase whatsoever, regardless of when it happens, or whatnot, of any felony, actually, you get a first degree murder charge yourself. So, since he said, "Hey, go do this," and knew what they were going to go do, he was directly involved. So,
did he actually say, "Go do this," or was it like in his wordings of like?
No, he said no. He said he gave the order to go do it, and it was involved in the planning, and that was his whole plan. Like that was the plan. But his thing was like, "I never murdered anybody. I never killed anyone." It's like, well, no, you were involved. So, because his charge was first degree murder, and he tried to defend it by saying that he never actually killed anyone. But you don't have to. Like, honestly, if you commit a felony and somebody dies, it does not matter what the felony was or whatever. If you're involved in any planning portion of that felony, you are charged with first degree murder.
Isn't it conspiracy to murder?
Isn't it accessory or something?
Accessory to murder.
It's like a accessory to first degree or something like that, but it's still a first degree murder charge because you're involved in the planning of a felony.
Well, I mean, he's a good example because he was a fucking mental case, and whether he killed someone or not, definitely someone should have picked up on that he was a bit yampy.
Yep. Who is it?
So, geez, man, we've gone way off the subject. We haven't we? This one. It's a bit normal, isn't it? It's normal. But I just feel that what you were saying earlier on with the society becoming more inward and we all stay at home now because of COVID and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Do you think that makes us more vulnerable to outside persuasion? whether that's media or whether that's politics or anything. What do you guys think on that?
I think it's a definite maybe. I'd really like to see what kind of studies come out in the next few years about that. Because the limited exposure that people are getting right now to like, social situations and things like that, I mean, it seems reasonable that it could have an impact on that, you know?
Yeah, like you get one like bit of information, but then you don't have the contact with your friends around you to conflict it if there is a conflict with what you're being presented. And then what ends up happening is with like the media outlets, what they do is they use algorithms to figure out what it is that you have an interest in, and they will directly tailor the news towards you in order to get you to click on it and get your, fucking money and all that type of shit and revenue from ads and all that. So you'll end up getting one thing that will say one thing, while the guy in the room next to you will have something that will say something different. And without that external social interaction where you can have it back and forth and be like, hey, I heard this, and let's get all the information together. You have no way of.
But there's not only that too, but there's like remote education. Like I don't know what the studies say on this, but I have heard from various people that remote education is much more difficult.
It's definitely more difficult because we have no idea what the fuck we're doing.
Right, and it's something you just had to suddenly adapt to. So yeah. The issue there is like if we're gonna have these false representations or entertainment representations of historical events, but not teach what actually happened alongside it, then it may actually become dangerous. Like,
yeah. I mean, I don't know whether this is true, but there's a TikTok going about that. I know I shouldn't watch TikTok. I know it's a load of bollocks. I know. But I watched this one, and it was a guy American guy walking around interviewing people and asking people about the Holocaust and what the Holocaust was. And like all these people are saying, like, is that a special type of mint, or is that a place in California?
Oh my God, man!
And I kind of watch it, and I'm thinking, fuck me, is that really what people think?
Well, and when I got really tired
I know
of
I always go on
videos,
about the Holocaust and shit like that, but it's the only thing I kind of link with, and I see.
I get tired of those videos and things like that because they only put up the stupid ones too. My question is, how many people did he go to get that representation of the stupidity? Like, did he spend a month talking to people, and like every other like week he got one or two, and then put a 30-second video up? And then you have all these other people who are actually smart and actually intelligible. He's like, oh, no, I ain't gonna put them on my fucking channel.
I don't know, man. It scares me either way because the 20 people that don't know today are 40 tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. That's the next generation that's going to be running the country or running the world or whatever they're doing. And you think,
well, here's my question: after he finds out they don't know, does he teach them?
I don't. But in the video, he didn't. He just kind of walked away, and that was all. So I don't think he did. I mean,
see,
I mean,
that's part of the problem right there. You find out somebody has like a lack of like logical information, and rather than sharing it with them, you point it out like, "Hey, look, he doesn't know this. I'm not going to tell him about it."
But I mean, that could go across for any amount of different things. I mean, it's not just that. And to be honest with you, if you asked a lot of inner city kids in England the same question, they probably wouldn't be able to link it with anything either. But going back to what you said about whitewashing media, I mean, kind of anyway, and us being stuck in the house. I mean, when I first I had my brain pop and I just couldn't deal with outside people. I went to social media because that was kind of like the link I had, and I thought, okay, well, let's try all this kind of shit. But I think I've said it before to you guys, but for the first couple of days, I was just thinking, fuck, everybody hates me. I'm white. I'm white. I'm Jewish. They don't like the Jewish people. I'm British. They fucking hate us. It was like that, you know what I mean? It was kind of like,
welcome in.
You're Irish too, aren't you?
Dancing
yeah, I got Irish blood, so
I
even
like
the English
that.
hate me.
Yeah, everyone hates us. Everyone hates the Irish.
Yeah, we're at a conference table today, matey.
Hello, bud. How you doing?
Thank you for coming in. Hope you'll have a wicked day and all that other shit.
Shit. Yeah, my daughter asked me if I was alive during the Holocaust.
Really? Well, at least she knows what the Holocaust is.
She's like, were you alive during the Holocaust? I'm like, fuck you. My response was, I shouldn't have said it to like a 4-year-old, but like, fuck you. No, she's not.
My little boy thinks I'm like 80. He said to me today, he said, you're 81, aren't you? And I was like, fucking hell, man. I opened that up.
I mean, at least she knows what the Holocaust is, but her concept of time and it's way off.
But I mean, taking that situation I just explained myself, I mean, I've got a family orientated around. I've got kids. I've got a wife, and I'm mentally relatively stable, relatively. But if I was kind of really depressed or really have severe anxiety, and I kind of got that impression from the media that was being pumped at me, do you not think that's quite harmful? Like you've said,
actually, social media and like those algorithms that you're talking about are absolute cancer. I wish that would go away.
Because it also removes culpability too.
Are we talking about if you talk about something, it pops up on your newsfeed on Facebook or something like that?
Yeah, basically,
like I talked about butt plugs before, and butt plugs came up on my Facebook newsfeed.
Yeah, and then like if you like click on a link where it's like, oh, somebody died nearby, so you click on the link and you start getting all these like alerts or something like, oh, this person died near you. Yeah, we noticed you like reading about it. And then like what ends up happening is you go down a rabbit hole of hatred.
I don't know what I've done to my computer, but then again, I buy my copies of computer of Windows and stuff from Russia. It's the best place to get them from, I find, much cheaper. But every time I go into a YouTube video or like a Twitch stream, I don't get British adverts. I get like German and Switzerland adverts. So
VPN?
Yeah, it must be my VPN, which just throws me all over the place. It flips me from here to there. So I don't really watch adverts because I never think they're anything to do with me. Like I get really random ones like tampon adverts and stuff like that. I'm thinking, I'd never asked for a tampon. What's that all about? Never needed one. Not yet, anyway. Nothing seeping out of me just yet.
It's this really weird world we're in, man. We're in a strange world when it comes to like how media is pushed at us, like especially like news media and stuff like that on social media. Like it really is all algorithms. Like they determine what's going to get the most clicks, and then they push that to the people who will click it. And it's based on like your personal profile, right? That's sold around between all these companies with all the data that you provide them. And it's like, at least as far as I understand it, it's pretty much unregulated. Like they just do this stuff.
The way they're talking is like regulation of AI is the equivalent of worrying about overpopulation on Mars. That's what like the leading security firms or whatever have been talking about. Because I've actually, when I'm at work, I'm by myself the whole day, so I put on like TED Talks and stuff like that. And AI and algorithms and stuff like that was one of the ones I got into for a lot. And our AI systems and stuff that we're building with that is growing so quickly that we need to start regulating it because it's gonna overshadow what we think we're capable of, and it already has. Like, there's like talk of like the next sentient idea, consciousness of whatever we have is through AI, and we're feeding into it through everything we do into like the metaverse and all this crazy conspiracy, bullshit, which I think is kind of funny, but yet at the same time, so close to true that it's scary.
I'd probably be happier to talk to AI than I would an actual person.
Should I tell about Alexa?
Do you not think that splits away from socialization? You're able to deal with it better. If you're able to talk to a twat, you can deal with the next twat a lot better.
This is why.
But you gotta assume, like, is it the same thing?
Yeah, that's why you keep coming back to me, isn't it?
Yeah.
But do you know what I mean? I mean, I've worked in hospitality all my life, so I've talked to millions of twats, and probably more than millions. And it kind of built up like a skin to people affecting you to a certain degree, but like onto a face-to-face interaction, I'm okay with. I'm fine with. They can say whatever they want to me, but when it comes down to social media or like a something that's put across to you as the truth, it kind of scares the shit out of me more.
It's in writing. It must be real.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if it's on a news feed or if it's on a Facebook, whatever, or a Twitter, there must have some kind of bearing because it's
a false,
physical.
Like a false authenticity type idea.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons social media is just so harmful, man, to like the national conversation or like the well-being conversation of humankind, It's just so harmful.
General to everything in life, no matter what.
I think it stops
Pretty much.
conversation. It stops conversation because if you say, for example, if I've got a different opinion to you, anybody here, yeah, we can talk about that. We can interact about it. We can chat about it, and you can see point of view. But if you read it on a statement, and some of these people get quite aggressive with their statements and what they believe in, I think people are scared to actually sit down and discuss it. And I think the only way we get anywhere is through discussion.
I don't think they did if they didn't have a chance to get away from the situation as soon as they said it. You know, say something, then turn it off.
Yeah, I agree with you that discussion is important, but I think social media takes discussion out of it in the sense that you can say whatever you want and then you don't have to reply. Like if someone says something you don't like, you can just block them, or like you know, you can just unfriend them or whatever.
But I think that's like a lot of the things we think about that are happening in the world around us, political, racial, all those kind of things, and hatred for different colored skins, different whatever. I think it comes from that social media, or at least it is definitely made worse due to that social media. Because if you read something like, for example, I mean, I've read them. All white people need to die. I've read, and you kind of think, fuck, does that mean that all black people want to kill me? But in your brain,
heard that conversation in person.
Yeah, I've heard that conversation as well. But and you just kind of think, geez, I'm white, but I ain't never done nothing to nobody. But I'm not saying that is the truth, because I know that's bollocks. It's not like that at all. But to read that and believe it is fucking scary.
It's like knowing that some people believe that make you worry about who believes it.
Yeah, it definitely does.
Because it's like, okay, so it's possible. Does that make it probable?
I mean, I'm Posy, man. I'm not saying it doesn't say it the other way around as well, because I'm
no.
I 110% sure
You're
that
not guaranteed it'll somewhere.
Yeah, I'm just saying it from my point of view, what I've read.
No, I got you.
So I have a question.
It goes both ways.
It's sort of political. Can only white people be racist?
So that's actually a really good question. From a technical standpoint, no. But from an actual like impactful standpoint, kind of yes. Because a lot of that, a lot of the power of racism and the power of hate like that comes from being part of the oppressive majority, which historically, at least in America, has been white people. And so there's a different impact to a white person being racist than it's like the difference between saying the N-word and calling someone I don't want to say it because someone recently got banned from Twitch for it, but like calling someone like a Ritz, or like
okay.
There's a huge fucking difference between those two.
You know, we have them in the UK. We like cheese with them. You know, cheese and crackers. We always love cheese and crackers.
Yeah. Okay.
I love cheese and crackers. Fucking lovely.
So I think like factually that statement is untrue, that only white people can be racist, but what is meant by it is absolutely true.
Yeah. I believe what you're saying is that there's an authority stance of it. So to belittle someone in a racist sense from a white person to a black person, there's more substance behind it. But
so
I mean, but I agree with you to a certain degree. But then I mean, like for example, I lived in South Africa. I know I go on about it all the time, but I lived in South Africa. But there is racism from both sides. I mean, for example,
from every side. It's not just two sides.
Yeah.
Obviously, need to think of the Asian community, the other communities out there.
I mean, I have a girl, not a girlfriend, but a lady friend that not like that, if you know what I mean. She's just a friend as a woman. She started seeing an Asian gent. Now his family were very negative towards her because she was white. She was very much pushed out of the family just because of the color of her skin. So they definitely can the Asian they definitely can be racist. I mean, for example, in Africa they call Malungu, which means white ghost. So it's a slur. So it is grouping someone into a group of people.
Yeah.
Man. Fucking man, it's making me go mad.
I don't know what that is. It's not my end.
It doesn't come to my end.
What is it? I don't hear it.
I've got to stop now. It's like.
What? Is it me tapping?
I was making me go mental.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's that sound.
But I think to have a situation like that, if you've got an oppressing force that can put that much pressure on another race,
it sounds like someone's chopping
fucking
something.
horrible.
Do you know what it sounds like? Because I've heard that sound plenty of times. Someone is currently doing lines of coke.
Oh, that's a lot of coke, that is, man. Jeez, that you got yourself a
know.
good kilo on the side there.
Right. Is it happening right now?
No.
How about now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, damn it! This week, sorry.
What is it? I'm more intrigued what it is now.
Yeah.
I'm twitchy.
Oh, you're knocking your leg. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. I see what it is now. But yeah, that's a big question, man. That's a big question, and I think you answered it in a very, very diplomatic kind of way. I like the way you answered it in a way that's not going to piss anybody off. That's impressive,
you
Posy.
straight in the middle.
Well,
I was that thinking.
It's not about that.
But I think definitely you could piss a lot of people off by saying that it is or it isn't. You know, do you know what I mean?
I think that I probably pissed a lot of people who have a false sense of white victimhood off by saying that. In the sense that,
because victim to me means like.
Well, it's like
victim,
an example of like, if an example of like a misguided sense of white victimhood would be someone getting super offended at being called like a Ritz or someone like that.
Yeah,
like what impact or what historical weight does that word hold against white person?
Well,
Zero.
I like Ritz, so I'm going to get very offended. I can't eat myself.
But like,
I
what
don't
about
like
with my immediate supervisor saying that the reason she didn't like me and was doing the shit she was because I was a problem, and the reason I was a problem was because I was white.
And see, that's not right. That is an example. That is an individual example of how you can be racist against a white person, and it is possible. I'm not saying it's not possible. What I'm saying is that, how did I word that before? Now I'm kind of lost.
You were saying that the connotations of a white person being racist towards a black person has historical hatred, so it has backing, it has merit and warrant. So modern day black versus white racism doesn't have that historical baggage that the other way around does.
Right.
I think that's how I understood it anyway.
Yeah. And so what happened? I don't know if that was a true story, Zombie, but if that's true,
that
should not have happened.
Just because I said I don't like Nicki Minaj, Rihanna, or Beyonce. And
that's not racism. You just don't like stupid people.
No. They were like, "Oh, you and your white privilege," which, yes, I am white, and in England we don't really see our white privilege. We probably got it, but
got to be honest with you. I don't personally, from a personal standpoint, I don't think we have any privilege.
Oh man,
as white
that's
people.
That's a different country issue.
Yeah.
If you were over here, it's a whole different thing. It's a mindset more than an actual
privilege. There's absolutely white privilege.
So
in
is
the
it
United
an actual
States.
mindset, or is it an actual thing? Like, is it?
It's a combination of both. Yeah, because like it's a mindset based off of fact. It's a mindset based off of historical. Fact. You know what I mean? So like it may not be happening at that moment that's bad, but yet you still have to have that fear in your mind and the thought that it could be just around the corner too.
If you want to see like the best real world example of white privilege, just go watch a Karen video. Like video. Like that is absolutely it right there. At least from like a mindset standpoint. The other white privilege is like a good example of white privilege. This is going to be kind of an interesting example. It's a story from my past. But there was a point in my mid-20s where me and a large group of friends had a papers, please stop by the police, where what happened was we were just walking. It doesn't matter, but from one party to another, right? But we were just walking down the sidewalk at night, and two cop cars pulled up and made us all give them our IDs, right? Which is technically an illegal stop. We weren't doing anything. We were suspected of a crime. There was nothing. But all of us were either white or white passing. So there's this subconscious thing there that is the white privilege, where maybe a white person isn't as scared of a situation like that, of being pulled over by the police, because they're not likely to be shot because they're white. But if we were a group of black teenagers or black 20-somethings, we might be scared, and we might be treated differently by those cops because of our skin color. And that's kind of what white privilege is. It's like this thing that just happens.
When it ends up happening, they've actually done studies to show, like, looking into police interactions with, different minority groups and stuff like that. And they studied and showed that police actually shoot less with African Americans, but that's not because they're less racist or whatever. It's because their first interaction, their first response is to go physical and go hands-on and restrain them, which is just as bad in my mind, because like what you're doing is like you have a situation where it's like, okay, I'm going to talk to this white guy, and what they'll do is they'll stand up and talk to him like a normal person. But what ends up happening is when they first, encounter an African American, they'll immediately start patting them down and just put them in restraints just for their protection. You know what I mean? So that's what ends up happening, is even if the situation doesn't go bad, their reason it doesn't go bad is because the first thing the cops do is they put them in handcuffs and sit them there so that they can't do anything. You know what I mean?
Is your police? I mean, our police force in the UK, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's every single colour.
Dancing Buddha has commented, privilege is often cult with things you don't have to think about, which is a part of privilege. Great example, Buzzy. The example you gave. Sorry about that, Bob.
But as like a person in England, we have to think about this. I mean, for example, like if I walk down the street and I see a group of hoodlums, the first things I'm not thinking, well, we call them hoodies in the UK, like little scallywags sitting on the side of the street looking like they're doing trouble. Chavs, yeah. But I don't think about their colour. To be honest with you, if I saw a group of black guys, I would be less worried than if I saw a group of 15-year-old kids with hoods on.
Well, I mean,
and our police force is so diverse, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So that might just be you as individually who thinks that, but the culture in the United States is not that way.
Yeah.
But I walked down the centre of Johannesburg, and I never felt scared.
I mean, in individual situations, I don't think there is that fear or whatever, because the people in the community know each other. They know the community, so that fear amongst each other isn't there. It's the police interactions where the officers, they don't live in the communities they police, which I think is a problem.
See, we have community support officers, so we have like an underset of police. We don't have police officers. What are they called, Almighty? They're
PSCOs.
PSCOs. So they're people that are employed directly from that community. The police that community.
They should know the community. That's something that we don't do. That's where one of the reasons we fail as a society in that sense is because our police don't know the people they're with. I mean, they don't know who they are. They don't know who they're talking to, and they should. Like, because there's this idea that like, okay, when not taking your work home with you, which is a big thing in the police force, in law enforcement as a whole, but that mindset is wrong, because when you go home, like, your job is society. Your job is helping the world around you, supposedly. But they don't have that mindset when they go in because they're not emotionally invested into the communities.
Why do they as soon as they see a black guy, why do they automatically assume that black guy's up to trouble? What
it is like what they're doing is you'll have people who live in communities who have very, very low black populations, so they don't see black people unless they're at work in high crime areas. So what they do is they just assume everybody in that fucking field is a problem.
I think, like, to say it a little more generally, like, there's that is, I think, one major reason.
Yeah,
but I don't think there is a simple answer other than the United States is kind of founded on racism a little bit. You know what I mean? So it's been a prevalent part of our history and our past and our society for so long that we're like fighting against it. We're like trying to come out of it, right? But there's still all these built-in things that kind of enforce it.
Yeah, because you're right. Because what it would be is you'll have one person who's not racist when they go into it, but all they see is what they see, and that gets reinforced in their brain. And then you have his partner, who he's seen his entire career watching his back or whatever, who's a complete piece of shit, talking to his other shit in his ear. You know what I mean? And then they build that racism, and now you have like these two races who are raising little, people who don't. And keep in mind, I'm judging this from a perspective.
Okay. So why has that happened in America and it hasn't happened? I mean, for example, like the British Empire.
I think it's because of a separation. It's because we have a forced separation. Even okay, from my perspective, from where I grew up in, because I grew up in a majority white neighborhood, the son of a police officer who ultimately became chief of police. I'm a military police officer myself. From my perspective, what it was is it wasn't the people, it was the area. And then what ends up happening is when they go into those areas working, they only interact with the negative side effect. They don't actually get to know the people because it's not their community and they don't care. So they just go in and have this us versus them mindset where everybody in this area is bad, everybody in this area is good. And it ends up being processed as race because that's what they see. And you know, if you actually live in the communities where you police or where you work, you would have an entirely different mindset and would actually be able to actually, I don't know, do something to help, as opposed to just coming in, arresting the people, throwing them in, and then not caring who they are as individuals. Like,
but no, what I was actually going to say is, I mean, like historically, I mean, a lot of nations have been based on slave trade. A lot of nations have. I mean, the Spanish were, the French were, a lot of big empires in Central Africa were based upon the slave trade. A lot of Muslims had slave trade up until 1981. So we all kind of, whether you go back even to the Slavs. I mean, the Slavs were the original slaves. They've all had some kind of basis with racism, whether that's between two white groups. I mean, that Whoopi Goldberg, we'll talk about that in a second, man. That fucked me off somewhere on. But it's always been there for the start of most like colonizers. Every nation, every color, every person has been a colonizer at some point. So it's been there, and it's been there at the fundamental start of most nations. But why was it so held? Why is it the basis of America?
Why is it man?
Because the job it was to enforce the laws, they don't unless it benefits them.
There's so much into it, man. There's so much. Like when slavery was ending, we had the 3/5 compromise. So that's where only 3 out of every 5 slaves could be counted and represented. Like that was the agreement to get out of slavery, right? So like even trying to do a good thing there leads to something shitty for that group of people. Like
but why offer somebody fucking freedom and then only give them half of it? What's the point in that?
Well, no, they get their freedom. They're talking about political representation.
Yeah, this was like taxation and political representation. Yeah, so
like what they did, the North didn't want the South to have more representation in Congress than they did themselves. So what they did was they're like, okay, we're only going to count your slaves as like 3/5, whatever you said. So therefore, you don't have a larger population and more representation in the Senate, which
but that's not fair.
Right. That's exactly it. That's another example of like institutional racism in the United States. It's a little bit of an older example, but
keep in mind those are the ones
that doesn't stand today, though, does it?
No, it doesn't exist anymore. No.
But why is that used as institutional racism if it's not standing today? I mean, obviously it's shit for the past.
Because it's an example of how long it took. Like that's how it started, and then it took more congressional push. Okay, now they're allowed to be counted as full people, and then it became how we gave them to push the right to own land, and then to push the right. It took so fucking long for each incremental step when it was just like, no, they're people. It should just be given. Like, okay, you get all of the rights right off the bat. Like there shouldn't have been that like step-by-step process, and there still was.
Why was that step-by-step process? Why did the bloke who signed the Emancipation Proclamation go, well, you're a bloke, you're a bird, don't give a fuck what color you are, you're a person. So there you go, you got all the rights as everybody else.
Man, I don't have an answer for you other than all of like.
Well, that's because
these people are
the political power. Yeah, the political
power.
They didn't.
I didn't know that, so I'm going to completely admit that I was completely and utterly I'm flabbergasted why that was a point. Why that was a point.
It's insane. So what it is what it feels like to me is the people in power for the longest time have done everything they can to stay in power. The only reason they've ever had to give any of that up was because of some sort of revolutionary act or whatever, right? So they give up as little as possible over time and over time and over time. And over time, we're peeling it away and peeling it away and peeling it away and making it better. But that's why it's still so bad, is because there hasn't been a big enough shift to completely eliminate it.
Yeah, and people won't act unless they're forced to act.
But even during the Second World War, I mean, I watched a documentary on this. You actually, I say you, I don't mean to say you as a negative thing. I mean, the Americans had, they had brigades. I think that's how you call it. Brigades of just black soldiers, didn't they? And those soldiers were sent to the front line first, as in like, because a lot of them came to Britain. That's because the ladies love the black the GIs. They fucking love. There's a program, you have to watch it. There's a new movie coming out in Britain. I hope you can get it. It's called Nan, and it's about London grandmother who grew up during the Second World War, and she gets like this big black GI, and she loves him, and her auntie her daughter nicks him off her. It's a good story. It's funny, but anyway, but I mean that even up until the 40s there was that segregation. I mean, the stories like in the UK when the GIs came over that they were complaining at the British pub owners for letting black guys in. So that's I mean, but then again, up until the 60s, you guys had like an apartheid, didn't you?
No, it wasn't separation. But hey, this is a fact. Like, our education system is shit too, because we even the people who are like, they misrepresent what was happening in the 60s, in the sense that, like, in 1964 the Civil Rights Act was passed, giving African Americans all civil rights, as in like that's when the act was passed legally, that they were considered equal, or whatever they needed to say, to give them the rights of civil human beings. But the problem is, all of those laws and everything that were enacted for them were just completely unenforced. All the marches on Washington with Martin Luther King, it wasn't for the fact that they were trying to get laws passed. It's that they had already been given the rights that they were seeking for, and they just were not being followed. Like in 1968, when that Civil Rights Act, another one was written, that was the Fair Housing Act. That just had to do with housing, because they were still being persecuted for not allowing like African Americans into free housing, or not free housing, but
just out of interest, why the fuck do you need a separate law because you're black?
No. They shouldn't have.
Why the fuck do you need that?
Point. That's the point. You shouldn't. That's the point. They shouldn't have needed it, but they had it, and they were still not being protected like they should have been. That's the point. Like, they had everything. They had the laws. They had the rights. They had all of everything about them, and people were still treating them like shit.
Look, I mean, there is racism, whether you like it or not, across the board. There's going to be racism wherever people are narrow-minded and fucking stupid, and they are racist in some cases. Not everybody, but some are. But a law is passed to protect people or to help people. Now, if you're saying, but that's, I mean, if you look, let's go for a law, a housing law. If you have a certain amount of income, you can get a house. Say, for example, a social house. Yeah, that's that law. Now, that should stand for everybody, not just a certain group of people.
Well, so the laws, they do stand for everybody like that. So like if you meet these criteria, you should be granted a house. The problem is the original law didn't say you can't prevent someone who belongs to this group, this group, this group, this group, or this group from buying a house on that basis alone. And so that's what they had to have. That's the kind of stuff they have to keep legislating, is protections, because the original laws didn't specify that you can't discriminate based on skin color.
Okay. Let me. My British mind just went pop then. Yeah. So you're telling me that you had a law that stated you're eligible if you don't break this amount of money in, but what some fucking rich white bloke was doing is going, well, I can manipulate that law to say that I don't want to rent it out to that brown person and that black person over there, right?
Yeah.
Just because it didn't say skin color in the law.
Yeah. Well, what it was is like what they would do is they would have a house and like, okay, I want to rent this apartment, and two people will come up to rent it, one being white, one being black, and they're like, no, we're not going to rent to you, we're going to rent to you because of this reason. And that's what they had to tell them. You're not allowed to do that.
But I'm assuming they didn't blatantly say, I'm not going to rent it.
No, they did.
Because you're black.
They did.
They did. They literally did say that.
Yeah, places in a lot of the worst places, yeah, they did. In some places, obviously, they had a lot more like tact, I guess you could say, about it. But it was, non-obvious, obvious at the same time. But
I mean, I can
in a lot of
understand
places,
in a situation like that, if you're renting a property to somebody and you look at their credit rating, you look at, I don't know.
Well, no, they put signs on their things saying like we don't rent to, and then they'll put words on there that I'm not going to repeat on screen.
That isn't anything to do with law being racist. That has got nothing to do with the fundamental problem within the system. Yeah. That is a social fuck up.
Yeah. But that's the thing, though. The
discrimination
laws they had to put into the laws, not just with that, but it had to be with like banking, with just basic rights. Like you can't deny somebody the right to work because of their skin color. I mean, you can't deny them any legal protection. Like you can't say, "Oh, I'm not going to." Right. Yeah, I know.
Well,
but that's what was happening. People were just
also though.
To do it.
When we say systemic racism, it's not just the law. It's also other systems like the tax code or like what are some other good examples? They're all falling off my brain right now.
Like with redlining with banking, that's what they would do is they would cross out certain areas and like, no, we do not rent or give out loans to these areas because there's a high risk of low return.
See,
the education system is another one.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just put that into perspective so I understand it in British terms. So instead of, like in the UK, say, for example, if your house is blacklisted, you cannot get a loan. So say, for example, like my dad was done for bank fraud. So we were all blacklisted whilst we lived there. Yeah. But it didn't black out the whole street. Yeah. It just blacked out your house. Yeah.
Yeah, that was you personally, your name, your back, and whatever.
In the US, they take a suburb or an area and they just blacklist it because most of the people there can't afford to pay their bills.
Yeah. Or they say they can't, that the risk is too high. So the idea of like, oh, if we rent here, we're not going to get our money back, so we're not going to give out loans, which sounds legitimate if you think about it. Like, oh, we're a private business, we don't have to take that risk. But at the same time, what it does is give the opportunity for these rich, racist, ignorant pricks to just red light out specific areas they don't like personally. And what's what they did? They line out black areas and neighborhoods and stuff like that.
Well, when people say it's I can't remember what the term is, but systemic racism, it's not really emphasizing the fact that the laws are racist. It's the system that they're implemented is racist.
Well, both.
It gives yeah, in some cases definitely, yeah. So I don't mean to cut you off at the same time.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, it's just depending on the situation, it can be either like a system like public education or the criminal justice system, or it can also be the laws that are written.
And like with sometimes what it does, it gives racists the opportunity to use the system. Like, well, what happened is someone will come up and like, oh, I have this problem. It's like, okay, well, I can't do anything about it, but you know what? I'll do it anyway. Don't tell anyone. I'll help you out here this one time. And then what happens if it's like a minority family who's like comes up, he's like, I need this. Like, well, no, nothing I can do to help you. And then they get pushed out. It gives them the discretion and like that type of shit.
Yeah. Let me give you a really good example, actually, real quick. The difference between crack and cocaine during the war on drugs. That is a really good example of a law being written to implement systemic racism. And the reason is because crack was introduced into the black communities, so they put a stiffer sentence on it. Where it's essentially the same drug as cocaine. And so while the law technically affected anyone who was caught with crack, it predominantly affected black people because of the distribution of the drug. And they knew that when they wrote the law.
And cocaine being primarily with businesses who were multi-billion-dollar companies, million-dollar companies, CEOs and people of those companies who lobbied with Congress and gave money into different political, backings. It help them turn a blind eye to what was going on. It's like, oh shit, these people are doing this. I'm not going to do anything to help ruin what they're doing because then I'm not going to get what they fucking give to me.
But why did they do that?
Money.
But how can it be down to money? Because basically what you're doing is taking out, say for example, you arrest more people that have crack cocaine on them.
But they don't see that. The people making the decisions don't see that. They're in their house. They look at numbers. They look at numbers on a piece of paper, and what they'll do is they'll pass a law or some sort of thing that helps them fudge the fucking numbers, and then people will get funding if they just put a 1 instead of a 2 on a little piece of paper, and then that gets filed up, and then that's what ends up fucking happening.
But if you're the leader of a country, yeah, and you're setting the laws and trying to now, if you segregate a mass population, a part of your population, don't give them correct education, give them laws that work against them, then they're just a burden.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you want to make a massive part of your population of your country just a social burden?
They're not a burden. They're a never-ending source of revenue for certain industries.
Yeah, but how can they be if they haven't got any education and they're being arrested for having crack cocaine on them?
Industries, the prison industry.
Prison industry.
Yeah, the prison industry, the free workforce. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or the military industry. The military is huge in the United States, and that's an opportunity for troubled kids, right? That's how it's marketed a lot.
Yeah, I worked with a couple of people who, when I was in the Marine Corps, they're like, I would have been out if I would have just took jail over the Marine Corps. I should have just went to jail. Yeah, because he did 5 years in the Marine Corps as opposed to 2 years in jail.
Yeah, but then again, I mean, they're still a burden, because as soon as they come out of the military, some of them suffer mental issues. They can't find jobs. They're on the streets.
No, they don't care about those burdens here.
No.
So yeah, they're not a burden. They're just ignored.
Yep.
I just don't understand why you'd want to do that. I don't get why you'd structure it around so these people are. Yeah, I mean, obviously you can put them in the prison system, and that obviously creates money that way, because you've got jobs, guards, wardens, and all that kind of stuff.
I think I understand where the hang up is, and it's that our priority in this country, and when I say ours, I mean like as a whole, is not the welfare of our society. It's profit. 100%.
Yeah,
it's the numbers. Look at the numbers. Profit. If you look at the numbers and don't look at the people producing the numbers.
Okay.
You know.
I mean, I think everywhere has a limit. I mean, even if you work for a company, profit is profit, and they want to make profit at the end of the day. But there has
We're
to
like
be
the Ferengi, man. We're 100% profit driven these days.
Oh yeah, 100%, mate.
Did you know our social security numbers? Our social security number is a product ID number. That's what it's used for. We, as people who have social security numbers, can be marketed for, like, this is our ability as a country to produce goods in order to induce trade with foreign countries. Like, here, we can fulfill our trade agreement with you, and here's our proof. We have this many people, and they go by our product number, which is our social security number.
That's quite interesting, actually, because in the UK there was the Great Fire of London. Before the Great Fire of London, there wasn't really a list of births and register of people. We didn't have birth certificates. We didn't have social security, like national insurance numbers and all that kind of stuff. But after the Fire of London, everything was scrapped, so we put back to zero. And there's this guy who has a conspiracy theory around it. Basically, the birth certificate, when we receive it in the UK, it's our name in capitals, and the number at the bottom is a company number. So none of us can physically own anything. And the reason why our name's in capitals, because the only other place you see names in capitals is on gravestones, is the fact that we're classified as dead from the day that we're born. Remember, that ID number actually produces money for the government. There's a lot more to it. I mean, I'm giving you a very rough idea of it, but it's quite interesting, the idea that each of us is individually like a money-making system for the government.
Well, it's weird because, like, okay, my wife's great uncle, he wasn't allowed to leave Africa, even though he was adopted by her mom. I mean, her great aunt, because he was a citizen there. They wouldn't allow him to leave until after he was an adult and whatnot. So it's weird how, like, a country can own the rights of a person in that sense. Like, I mean, granted, he would be famous from that, but I mean, still.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, like, for example, like leaving Africa. I mean, my wife left Africa. It cost a lot of fucking money. But I mean, you're linked with that. I mean, even her with her ID, it's still linked to her. But then it depends how much you manipulate the system. My wife's got 2 IDs and 4 names in South Africa. So
but like, here's the thing, like they were over there. They were working as missionaries. So when they adopted them, that's what they were. When their mission was over and they came back to the United States, he had to stay there. Like they
that's
wouldn't allow
weird
him
though,
to leave.
because, like for example, my son who was born in South Africa, he had dual nationality.
Yeah.
He automatically had a British passport, and they were quite quick with that. There was like 2 weeks. So I mean, maybe he wasn't registered birthed in where in America or whatever.
No, he was actually born. His dad was a tribal chief. His mom was like the fourth wife, and she died during childbirth.
Yeah.
And according to like the tradition, if the chief's wife dies in her childbirth, it's the uncle's job of the chief to raise the child, because if the other wives, I guess, mistreat the child, or the ghost of the mother will haunt them and bring misfortune amongst the tribe.
It's crazy in Africa because like everyone's. I had a princess and a king who used to work with me.
Yeah, but what his uncle did is he left him in the jungle overnight, and
That's one way to teach him.
Yeah, well, he went back and found him, and he was still alive as a baby, so he took him to this mission. And it's funny because I actually have a book about his whole story. He grew up to be a microbiologist working with this doctor from Walter Reed Air Force Base. Came over and he like developed this way of like testing for this like freshwater parasite that like would get into people's systems and like basically cause a lot of rare disease and shit like that in a bunch of like African villages and shit. And he was able to develop a test where like they were able to clear villages of this parasite in like a matter of weeks, when it used to take months just to even determine if there was an infection in the area at all. So he grew up to be a pretty cool dude.
It worked in his favor, didn't it? Let's get back to the murder thing, shall we?
I'm sitting here talking about this guy just saved a whole bunch of lives.
Yeah.
So what would be your ideal way to kill someone?
If I really had to think about it.
Yep.
Me personally, it would be
Lock him in a room.
exposure.
What do you mean by exposure?
Take him to somewhere really cold. Dress them naked, get them naked, pour water on them, and leave them in a cold situation.
Smart. What about you, Mr. Zombie?
Oh, okay. I had an idea a minute ago, and I don't remember. Come back.
Posy?
This is a bit dark. This is
my ideal. What is the question?
Ideal way to kill somebody.
Your personal ideal way to kill someone.
If you absolutely had to, like if Jesus came down and said you had to murder someone for the sake of the Holy Cross.
Oh wow, man, I'd have a lot of questions.
I don't think Jesus would come down and say that.
I know, right? But I mean,
so
if Jesus is real, I bet he's a right stoner. Go on,
it's a hard question to answer, man. I don't want to kill anyone. What's my goal? Like, is it to not get caught?
Oh, Jesus.
Everybody in the world accepts the fact that you're doing it. Like it's an agreed upon. Maybe it's like even a helpful, like he's like terminally ill, and it's a mercy thing. So like
that's actually asking actually.
Okay, so if it was like someone who just needed to die, and I wasn't like intending to make it painful or anything, probably carbon monoxide. I would use carbon monoxide.
See, now it makes me look like a fucking psychopath, man.
Well, I haven't spoke yet, Bull. So I've kind of figured some stuff out, right? First of all,
oh dear,
if you're going to kill someone, don't kill anyone, you know.
That's good, yeah.
Right? So kill someone you have no attachment to at all, right? Then you burn your fingerprints off. So then how the hell are you going to leave fingerprints? Right?
Thinking.
If you're going to take them to a woods, don't take a car or a bike. Use your shoes, because then you can get rid of your shoes. Right? Always carry spare clothing with you as well.
Just as always.
Right?
I always do. I've got a very weak bladder.
Depending where you are in the world, if you've got pigs, feed the body to the pigs. Chop it up, feed it to the pigs, because then you're getting rid of all the evidence.
That's very true. Yeah. A pig is a greedy pig. It can eat 300 kilograms of raw meat in 5 minutes. So always be scared of a bloke who has a pig farm.
Yep.
That was an excellent quote. I know that movie.
Mine would be, what you should do is, okay, you take a pistol with one bullet, and you lock somebody in a room by themselves, just complete darkness, and just blare Britney Spears music. And to the point where they can't take it. Just constantly, nonstop, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, until they're just done. And they do it themselves.
Yeah, I think they would do it to themselves, definitely. Hit me, baby, one more time. But all I gotta do is let's do it once, and I want to kill myself.
Yeah.
But what it will be a loop of just the first verse,
Hit me, baby, one more time.
and then it will loop back.
What do you guys think of euthanasia?
I think it should be legal.
Kids in China?
What?
You mean like kids in China?
Euthanasia, as in if someone gets to a certain level
funny.
of sickness.
I think voluntary euthanasia should be 100% legal.
I think
assisted
so too.
suicide.
Euthanasia. Please explain it to the chat. Memory.
It's basically when someone's terminally ill and they know that the inevitable is coming very soon.
Well, it's basically a friendly way of suicide. Friendly suicide.
Right.
Friendly word for suicide.
Oh, they did that in
Assisted
Emmerdale
suicide.
years ago. Emmerdale
Yeah.
is like a soap. They did that in Emmerdale.
Assisted suicide.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it should be something that's it should be just be way. The reason why they haven't made it legal in the UK is because there's a large percentage of the elderly that have dementia, and after a certain level of dementia, they can't make that decision for themselves, or they're not allowed to make that decision for themselves. But I think it should be something you should be talked about in the UK earlier, and then you can discuss about it. But the thing is, whether we like, I mean, my wife's a nurse, so she sees it every day. When an elderly person gets to a certain level, they put them on a morphine drip, and she knows after 2 days of being on the morphine drip, they're dead. So it's whether they like to call it assisted suicide or not, it fucking is assisted suicide.
So that's isn't that more like hospice?
Well, see, if you get to basically, it's kind of like hospice, but obviously the elderly and also people who have got terminal illnesses, cancers and stuff like that. If you get put on, they call it something, but it's a morphine drip basically, and they die after 2 to 3 days. As soon as they're on that drip, they're dead.
There's
is it illegal?
The question.
Yeah.
Well, there's the question of like, even if you're of sound body in mind when you come up with the idea like, oh, I wouldn't mind being euthanized if I become dementia related. What are the chances that when you're an old person and your kids hate you, that they'll be like, oh, look, they're dementia. They got, dementia. Let's put them down. And you're like, no, I'm perfectly fine. I'm just a weirdo. And they're like, no, we got to put her down. Grandma's getting old.
Well, there is that element as well, because obviously inheritance and stuff. And of course, when you get to a certain age, you start eating into the inheritance for the kids.
Thank you.
And then the kids might turn around and say, well, let's knock Granny on the head now because she's eating up. We've got to sell the house.
Yeah.
That's an element they take into consideration.
It's free in Switzerland, right? I mean, it's not legal.
But there was a person that took their elderly, I think it was a mother, but I'm not sure. They took somebody there. They were euthanized in Switzerland, and then on the flight back, they were arrested.
Yeah, I remember a story about that.
Yeah.
I would just stay in Switzerland.
Well, yeah. But hasn't Switzerland got the highest suicidal rate or something? It's supposed to be quite depressing, Switzerland.
Man, there's some interesting lines that you can draw though. So like, isn't even that one in Switzerland only in cases of terminal illness?
I believe so. Yeah.
I don't think dementia is considered a terminal illness, is it?
No. But of course, usually, say for example, I'll give you an example. A person's got dementia, but then they get cancer when they have dementia at an older age. I only use dementia as it because that's another reason why they haven't got the choice for themselves if they get a terminal illness whilst they have dementia.
I suppose that makes sense. I have to think about that one. I don't know exactly how to handle that. I mean, the answer. Excuse me. I feel like the answer lies somewhere in medical power of attorney. But I haven't yet thought of a way to eliminate abuse, like what you're saying of like the kids killing their parents because they can.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'd have to think about how to do that, man. But
I mean,
I still think it should be legal.
For example, in the UK, we have donor cards, which are just little credit card things.
Said donut cards.
Donut cards. No.
Do you know what I keep picturing? I keep picturing the Monty Python and the Holy Grail when the guy's coming around. Bring out your dead. He's like, I'm not dead yet.
Well, basically, these little. these little cards indicate to the doctors that if you die, you can take the organs for somebody else.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, that in my mind, something like that would possibly be the answer.
Well, we have the organ donors on ours, and we also have DNRs, which is do not resuscitate orders.
Yeah,
but
we have do
it's
not
a matter.
resuscitates.
But it's a matter of when it's a drawn out illness, and it comes down to like, oh, is there a possibility for revival, or is it like a quality of life thing where like, okay, she'll survive, but it's going to be burdened by her care, so let's just kind of pull the plug now, as opposed to giving it a chance and then get worried about that shit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a moral dilemma, isn't it? And also, people will manipulate the system, like Possy's saying.
Well, I think the biggest dilemma is it's kind of a similar argument to abortion, right? My body, my choice. That's how.
Yeah.
It should be.
I want to make a comment on that. Right. So here we go.
Just the difference is
this is mainly for you, right? So, right.
So
a man, right, has no choice in. Like a man gets a woman pregnant, right, accidentally, and the man says to the woman, "I don't want that baby," right? Can that man have a choice or not? If a woman can have I'll say what I'm going to say. If a woman has a choice of aborting it, a man has a choice not to be there for that child. Personal opinion. What do your thoughts on that? There's probably a better way of explaining it, but I explained it Nick's way. Terribly.
Personally, I don't think a bloke has any say. I think the woman holds the baby for 9 months. If the woman doesn't want to bring that baby into the world, it's a harsh thing to say, but I mean, if I knocked a woman, it's not my choice. It's not my body's not going to go through that. I'm not maybe I'm not ready. I don't think it's my choice.
So you're saying that if the woman decides not to abort the baby, the man should have the decision not to be there for the baby.
Yeah.
They already do.
Yeah, but they pay alimony or whatever it is.
Child support.
Child support.
What I'm saying is, like, if they do not want to be there for the baby, they do not have to pay that.
You can sign your rights over to the other side.
But depending on where you're at, it doesn't matter. You can sign over your rights, but you'll still be charged like a child support and shit like that.
Is it also true in America? I know this is like a different subject. I will get back to you in a minute, Posy. Is it also true, like, say, if Posy, you're a woman, and because you're that's the person's name I said, right? And the father of your child fucked off and left you. You leave your child with me, right? Just to watch for 2 hours. Is it true that now Posy can get me for child support?
No.
No.
Sure?
No, I don't think
so.
Yeah.
Leaving you with 2 hours babysit for child support? Fuck that. They have to be your biological kids.
Because I am sure that was a law, but like I said, I am not 100% on that.
How are you going to have a charge a babysitter for child support, basically?
Well, I think there was somebody that tried it, though.
Yeah, definitely someone's tried it.
Somebody tried to do that.
Like they lived with somebody.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you were like
familiar.
A father to me. Like it's like you were like a father to them, so therefore you have children.
I think
cleaned them up or some shit.
This is from memory. I think I know what you guys are talking about, but if I remember it right, the person ended up still having to pay child support because their name was on the birth certificate.
Even though he was not biological, but he took
not the biological father, but his name was on the birth certificate. So when they split, he still had to pay it. At least if I'm remembering that right. I think
but if you put your name on the birth certificate, then you've taken responsibility of that child. So if you've done that, then I can understand why. But I mean, if it's just a rat, like say for example, you leave it with your mother for 2 hours and she suddenly starts going, "Hey, you've left. I want child support, you bastard."
Yeah.
That's
or if like you live with somebody for like a month, they're like, "Hey, no, you need to pay for me and my kids." Like no.
But going back to your first, sorry, Posy, mate, go for it.
That's a really heavy question because I'm still thinking about the one that you asked me about. Should the dad be able to not pay child support? And it's a really heavy question because from one angle, one angle could be presented that the mother could be trapping the father into paying the money, right?
Yeah,
by having the kid.
That's the way I've seen it. Like,
but
you got your dick wet, so it's your responsibility.
Right. Like actions have consequences, right?
Yeah.
And you can't just abdicate all responsibility. It's not like the mother is by having the baby. You know what I mean?
Like, so
Like-
here's my question: what if somebody for like, let's see, from 2007 to 2017, openly denied wanting their children, and even abandoned them on multiple occasions, but then as soon as they started collecting child support, quit their job and just started collecting, and it's like, oh, I love them now. I mean,
well, child
that's
support's not enough to like support a lifestyle. Child
oh
support.
no, then let's say they've been on fucking maternity leave for their next relationship, and they've been on maternity leave for 3 years now.
Yeah, but that's benefit scamming.
Yeah.
That's not really what we're.
Well, what it is she got remarried, and like he has a job and stuff like that. But to collect from me, she went back and tried to like say like she deserves a raise in child support because she hasn't been working for 3 years or 2 years. I mean, at the time, and it's like, well, why haven't you been working for that long? It's like, oh, I've been on maternity leave. And how many people do you know who get 2 years of maternity leave?
You can in the UK.
No, in the U.S. though.
Not in the U.S.
Like, and what ended up happening? She realized like, oh no, we go off of your last job then, and she's like, God damn it! So she didn't get what she wanted. So I got lucky in that aspect, but like they don't look at like want responsibility. They just want the family to be together. So like, okay, you make more money, therefore you're going to have kids, which doesn't make sense when the mother the entire time says they don't want the kids in the first place and openly abandoned them before. But it's like, oh no, you need to work it out, work together, be a family, because that's what teaches children shit.
Okay, in that situation, my friend, the person that has said that has taken their responsibility away from it, so they have no bearing over the child, and that child should be then supported and questioned in regards to that. And if it's a case that they've completely abandoned it, they have nothing to do with the child. Like,
but here, get this. Okay, you have to hear the rest of it then. Okay, the what it was is she was supposed to pick him up from school. She never showed up to get him. The kids showed up to my stepfather's house. My stepfather, being the chief of police, was the one who he found him and felt like read the messages like that she was abandoning them. They didn't want anything to do with him, or she was done with them. He was the one that said, "Oh, you have to go back to them. They need their mother in their lives." A week later, after she got out of rehab or whatever the fuck she went. It was that they don't want to do anything at all. Like they just don't want to do it. Anywhere you go, like you try to file, it's fucking bullshit when it comes to child protection in the United States. Like that's what it should be. Like you abandon them, then you should, have no responsibility or get away from them entirely. Like I would happily just take my kids away from them if she doesn't want them. But yet she's like, oh, I could get paid to do this. Now she wants them all of a sudden.
I watched a video yesterday of two twins in a child court thing. One of the twins left her daughter with like a sister, and the sister was trying to claim money. So I think that's the sort of situation. Like, and she was like, "Oh, but I want my kid back at some point." And the judge was just like, "Well, at the minute you can't have it back because you've left it in parental care, so you have to pay this much." Like, blah de blah.
That sounds like people trying to exploit the system.
Yeah.
Rather than like kind of how the system is supposed to work, which I think I thought of an answer, and I think that if a baby is born, the father should have to pay child support, and the reason even if he doesn't want to be involved with the kid, and the reason is that it's not a woman trapping a man into paying money. It's that two people took part in creating a life. They took part in creating a life. And so they both need to support that. Like by birthing the child, the woman is not absolving any responsibility. If anything, they're taking on more. And so that responsibility should be shared between both parents. I think that's how I feel about it.
100%.
It seems shitty. Like what ends up shitty, at least in my point of view, is like when the father wants all the responsibility and the mother wants none of it, but will stay in it just for the sake of the support.
So in a situation like that, for example, in the UK anyway, if a father decides that he doesn't want to pay that money, he's taken to court to pay that money.
Yeah.
But whilst that money is not being paid, or a mother, in whichever case it is, in situation is, while that money isn't being paid, they have no access to the child. Now, there's two fuck-ups with that, because the main thing is it's the child that's important. The parents are parents. Now, the bloke got his dick wet, and the woman, she got what she wanted or whatever. They had some fun. but they weren't clever enough to use anything, so a baby was born. Now that goes out the window in my mind. Whether they're together or fucking not, it doesn't matter. There's a kid there now, and in the eyes of the law, that kid is the most important thing. So any support it needs to get from both parents. 100%. I mean, it's horrible to say it, but I believe that when a woman gets pregnant, it's got nothing to do with the man whether she has that kid or not. It's up to her. But the dad still needs to put his few pence in the pot to make sure that kid gets everything it wants.
From my perspective, like when it comes to the system, like from where I look at it, from my experiences and stuff like that, because my experiences are different. What that same mentality of like they need to come from both parents prevents, like in my case, like it's a person who shouldn't have custody of them being like, oh no, you both have to work together, but when one of them shouldn't be involved.
Yeah, but that's not for you to decide.
Well, I mean,
unfortunately,
I know that's the thing though. Like, what they'll do is they'll not look at certain situations. Like, oh, okay, so this person, it's testified that this person gave them, magic mushrooms and provided a 12-year-old, liquor. He called that he was dragging them by their hair, went into explicit detail. It's like, no, you guys need to work together. Like, this is someone who, he literally went into details about how he wanted to watch us die. And they're like, yeah, well, we don't want to hear about that.
I think that's more of like an individual failure. Like generally when shit like that happens, like people step in and kids get taken away.
Oh no, it doesn't no, not here. No, that is a regular thing. That is specifically what happens frequently. In fact, the head of Children and Youth Services in the county next to ours was recently arrested and charged with child endangerment because they were just letting cases like this go through. They're just like, okay, no, just fucking pass it on.
Well, yeah, but that's a failure of this. That's like an individual failure, not a failure of how it's supposed to work.
Yeah, but that's what the problem is. It's like that's the norm. It's not like when you think of it like an individual failure, like no, that's how things are being done. Like that's a failure that it's been brought up as being the norm. Like it's
before
expected.
The person who got arrested for mishandling those cases, that was the norm. Is it still the norm? If so, then it should be investigated. But that doesn't mean something's wrong with the system. It's wrong with the people.
It's still the norm. It still is. I mean, we got, like we had to have fucking A. Like, and the problem is, it cost hundreds of dollars just to take the stuff to court to actually get the information. Like, in order to get the transcripts to show that people are lying in court, it cost over $600. And that's not even talking about the filing fees for protection orders and that type of shit like that.
Even if you have no proof and you have no money to take this to where it needs to go to, if a child is in danger, there must be systems in place, or there must be services that you can contact to make sure, or to at least investigate what you're saying.
That's what it is. That's the thing. Okay, remember our case? What it was is like I even called the counselors and reported himself for doing something. What happened was we get a PFA, so there's a protection of abuse, but they're temporary because it's an emergency. So you have to wait to go to court to get it finalized. In the time frame between the time you get the emergency PFA to the time you actually go to court, CYS, the Office of Children and Youth, they come in and they investigate. Because the person who is the offender in the situation does not have access to the victims because there's a PFA in place, it gets marked off as unfounded that there is no threat anymore because they have a protection order against them and the person does not have access to the victims. Then what happens is you go to court. It's like, oh, okay, this button right here is checked on this piece of paper saying that there is no threat to these people. So therefore, there is no reason to keep this PFA active. Therefore, the children have to go back to the person who abused them because this thing said that it wasn't a threat because that person did not have access to them. But they don't look at that because that would take going into the case and actually hearing what's going on. When in fact, all they did was just look at the little box where the protection, the service, because what it is, it's a remove culpability, really what it is they have these services that they're like, oh, I'm just going with what they said. I'm taking away my responsibility by reading what's on this paper. And the reason this is on this paper is because this person didn't have access to them. So I'm going to give them access to them because it's not written there. It's a fucking circle of crap. And they tell you if you have a problem, call the police. You call the police, they call CYS. CYS says go to the courts. Go to the courts, they look at CYS. CYS says, well, did you call the police? Yeah, we call the police, they talk to you. And it goes a fucking circle all fucking around. And when we finally get the actual court documents, it shows that there was like 18 false fucking reports, all of this criminal activity and court documents, stuff like that, and not a single charge filed. And it's proven in the fucking court documents too.
To me, that sounds like a fucking shitstorm, and it sounds like it sounds like a I don't know what it sounds like. I wouldn't even. I mean, as soon as like if a kid's in danger, and that's the first thing you think about. You put aside the parental issues. I mean, that's got fuck all to do with the safety of that child, which is the most. But
that's what they do. Is they put away the personal details and they look just at like the checks. Is there a threat? The boxes on paper, how it looks. And what they look at is, okay, since there is a protection order in place at that moment, which is temporary, they don't take into account that it's temporary. They just take into account that it's there. It gets declared that there is no longer a threat because at that moment, there is not one. So what happens is the protection order gets thrown out entirely because the judge at the other end sees that it was no threat in the situation. And, they're not looking at the fact that the reason that there is no threat is because there was a protection order in place. So what happens is it gets thrown out, and then it goes right back. And then something else happens, and you get right back into the system again, paying hundreds of dollars over and over and over again just to get something brought to court, just for them not to look at it.
Well, that sounds like
until finally it is. And then when finally they do actually get somebody to actually look at it, it gets fixed like that. Like, oh, they actually did their jobs and actually saw something. They actually did what the fuck they're supposed to do. It gets corrected. But that's the thing. When not doing the right thing is the norm, that's what happens in this area. Like, that's what happened. It is the norm to not do the right thing and to pass it off. And they use that fact that, like, oh, I'm looking at this piece of paper to completely remove culpability from their own actions. It's like, I'm acting based off of what this says. It's like, well, you're not reading the entire fucking thing.
So, sorry. Oh, sorry. Go. No, go on.
I was just going to say, it's tragic. It still sounds more like it's the people and maybe not necessarily the system itself, which sucks.
Yeah.
But like, it sounds like the ideas are there, just people are abusing it, which is tragic.
Which is what happens, I think, more often than not, is like there's good ideas and there's good systems in place, but what it is, it's the people who are responsible for actually enacting the rules or enforcing the rules that just are not following through.
Yeah, but that could also go for a lot of other things. I mean, what you're saying is the system itself has good intentions, but the people that enforce the rules don't have good intentions.
Exactly.
Or are fucking useless and lazy.
Exactly. And how do you choose which one? Like, how do you determine which one it is? Because then you start calling someone, ignorant, and then they start fighting back to you, and then what it does is it just fucking continues.
But that also goes back to the idea of systemic racism. I mean, it's the way that people. It's a lot of things within that. I mean, if it isn't the system itself in the sense of laws, it's the people that are doing it. You've got to tackle that issue, and it's the same with you. You've got to find out where you need to talk to the right people to do it, because the systems must be in place to help. I mean, the kids are the most important. The adults can fuck off. They don't matter about them. They've been through it. They've done whatever they need to do. They got to pay for whatever they've got to do. It's like what Almighty said at the start about having to pay for it. Now, personally, I feel that if you've dipped your wick, I'll use English slang because I'm going to put it in a crude way. But if, as a man, if I've dipped my wick and the girl's got pregnant, it's still my responsibility, even if I don't want the baby. That's the scare. I mean, my mum always said, when I was being brought up, you've got to be sensible when you do it. Well, she didn't put it like that. She put it very crudely, but I won't say how she put it. But you've got to wrap it up, haven't you? I mean, you can't just be sticking it anywhere and hoping that she doesn't get pregnant every time. And if it does happen, then it's your responsibility to do it, to deal with it. But the woman has. But isn't there something in the US about abortion? Isn't there something going on? Because Texas is now.
Oh man.
Have they legalized or illegalized abortion?
So Texas is kind of insane. And even though it's like the most American thing, I don't feel like they represent America very well anymore, especially in things like this. What they've done is they've passed a law that allows citizens to sue abortion providers. Like, not even the person who's getting the abortion. Like, if you know that, like, let's say your friend who's a girl went and got an abortion, you could like report her and claim a reward even. Like, it's like a citizen bounty system. It's fucking insane. And it basically, so the big piece of legislation that makes abortion legal here is Roe v. Wade. It's like got decades of precedent, right? But that kind of flies in the face of Roe v. Wade, and the Supreme Court upheld the Texas decision for obvious but unstated reasons.
Okay, so sorry, but don't they understand that will have backlash? Do they not know their history? Because say, for example, like in the UK, for example, when we were more Catholic and more Church of England, abortion was outruled. So what you used to do is you used to go see Auntie Irma down the road, and she had half a bottle of brandy and a knitting needle, and they used to do it in their front room. So
I think, I mean, yeah, like the consequences of outlawing abortion are well documented. Like, it used to be that way here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With the back alley abortions and stuff. I honestly don't think they care, and I think that this goes into the kind of divisive politics in America. That is, abortion is a social issue, right?
But they look at the people who would do that as not being people.
Oh, I guess what I'm getting at is like, one faction of the politics in this country tends to focus more on social issues to distract from taxation issues and things like that. And I think that's why there's such a fervor around it. Because it's kind of a push narrative. Like, does that make sense?
Kind of. Like, I kind of get where you're going with it. It's
like,
kind of like a
diverse...
diverse...
the same things of like what parts of being gay are legal or illegal. You know, like that sort of stuff. It's more spectacle than actually accomplishing anything.
They're buzzwords
for the people in power.
Right? Can gay people get married in all the states across America now?
Now they can, yeah.
They can now. Okay.
But that's, I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is it's a really simple problem to solve, but it's, and it has nothing to do with where the money flows, right? So the more attention people focus towards simple to solve social issues, the less attention they focus towards financial issues. And that's how a big part of how, like the income gap or the wealth gap is maintained and increased.
Okay. So it's how is that affecting the income gap?
Well, I think I'm just going to come out and say it. Republicans in the United States, the right wing, tends to focus on social issues to distract their voters from the fact that they're voting against their own interests financially.
Okay.
And that's how it contributes to the wealth gap. Basically, the right wing generally votes for tax decreases for the rich, tax cuts for everyone, but that primarily benefit the rich, by voting for social issues. Things like abortion being outlawed. And so by really pushing the narrative that, hey, abortion is bad, the right wing can capture all those people, causing them to vote against their own financial interest, which perpetuates that problem, which is kind of the root of all of these problems.
To be honest, though, that's not a Republican thing. That's a politician thing. It's just a matter of which political issue they decide to, put their backing behind.
Well, I'm talking about abortion specifically.
Yeah, and abortion specifically, yeah, the Republican conservative side of it, they lean more towards the religious sect, where they're saying
yeah,
because they're
it's all kind of done through religion, but
because it's the most emotional hit point. If you put a religious aspect on it, then it actually hits people closer, and that's what they can go after. It's all buzzwords, and draw attention to the your cause quicker than the other person can, and then the people who have the quickest emotional reaction to a problem will be the ones to get what they want.
Yeah, but so I guess my point is that all those people that are wrapped up in those social issues are actively perpetuating the problem of our wealth issues, our wealth gap issues in America, which are the much bigger problem, in my opinion. Okay.
I don't know anything about Republicans. I don't even know which side. So I think Republican is what Trump was. Am I right in saying that? Okay, and Biden is the other way.
Yeah.
So, okay, Biden's a Catholic, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Is he? Really?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
He's Irish. Well, he says he is, but he was born. His family is British, English. But if he's a Catholic, then he's against abortion.
Yes, he is Catholic. Well, so there's an important distinction there, and this is why the social issues thing I think is an overblown issue. There is a separation of church and state, which I fully believe in, and what that means is you don't get elected and you don't legislate based on your religion. You legislate based on what's in the public good. Beliefs are supposed to be separate from politics, and there is plenty of scientific evidence, plenty of like social reasoning or whatever went into Roe v. Wade, that says abortion should be okay. Basically, my body, my choice.
Yeah.
It's strictly the religious side that says it's not a medical procedure and that it's wrong. So
Also,
it would be wrong for Biden to oppose that.
And also, we got to remember the federal government's stance on it was that it wasn't their decision, that it was up to individual states to determine whether or not it should be legal or not. So when it comes to funding for organizations who perform abortions, it can't come from federal funding. So what ends up happening is they're fighting for, it's like, oh, we need this funding in order to provide all these other, social, like things that we actually need in smaller communities, but they can't afford it because they also perform certain other, things that are being.
Well, I mean, like, regardless of how they're handling it, like that's the reason that abortion is such a hot button issue.
Mm-hmm. But then like what happens is it gets misrepresented because like people would be like, oh, we're yelling at the government for this, for them denying this right, whatever. But it's not them that's doing it. It's their own state government and their own state representatives that they should be going after and be like, hey, you need to fix these laws because there's a lack of understanding.
It should just be legal. Like,
well, yeah, that's the thing. Though,
but
like,
it wasn't it self-funded.
That's the thing. That's what
you paid for abortions in the U.S., didn't you? Wasn't it
like
business?
Medical, like the organization that does it. Like they would go after Planned Parenthood because in some areas they would perform abortions, and they also got funding from the federal government. It's not the fact that they did all the other stuff that was good. It was just that they're not supposed to perform abortions if they're getting money from the federal government. That was one thing that people latched onto. But it's just the organization isn't allowed to do it if they get that money from from the government. But they.
Okay, I'm just going to Google something because I want to before I say what I'm going to say, I need to know I'm right. I'm just trying to find out the maximum term.
So the new Batman's out soon, guys. What's everyone thinking on that, mate? That's kind of like politics.
The what?
The new Batman.
Ooh, I haven't even seen any trailers. Do they have trailers out?
Quite cool.
Oh, yeah, it's out on the 4th of March.
Oh, wow.
It's out extremely soon. And it does look pretty good.
Catch up on that. Like, so, as an entertainment thing, Batman movies are generally pretty good. I think the Heath Ledger one is probably the best one. In fact, the Christopher Nolan series I like because it focuses on the villain more than the Batman himself. And they tell some really good stories, and they provide some really interesting points of views in those ones.
Okay, the only problem with them movies was the fact that he put a voice on when he was Batman.
Yeah.
Apart from that,
Batman.
The films were great. Oh, fun fact, did you know when Michael Keaton actually said, I'm Batman, apparently he was so hungover, he was supposed to say something else, but he just thought, fuck it, I'm just going to say, I'm Batman.
I'm Batman. So in the US, you can have an abortion in Texas, but only up until 6 weeks.
Yeah. That's one of the things that they did. And the reason they did that is because it's almost impossible to have an abortion in that amount of time, to even know you're pregnant. You know what I mean? So they're trying to like backhandedly prevent people from getting them.
So in the UK, it's 24 weeks.
Yeah.
After that, it's not an option unless you go privately. But I think that's more down to the fact that it's just not practical. It can become quite dangerous after a certain amount of time. But yeah, I mean, it's possible you could find out you're pregnant within 6 weeks, but it's more likely,
very unlikely.
Yeah, it's more likely not to.
I look like I'm 6 weeks pregnant. This is why I was asking that question earlier, because I still can't find a fucking father.
Fuck me, mate. I don't know how that's going to work because he ain't got all the bits, my friend. That's the problem, isn't it? What do you think about what Whoopi Goldberg said? I'll ask you, Posy.
Oh man, what did she say?
There's a history to this because there was some kind of teaching around the idea that the Jews weren't actually a separate race.
I'm trying to remember what she said.
She basically said that it wasn't race hatred, the Holocaust.
Oh, right. Well, I think that she was wrong, and I'm glad that she came out and apologized for it.
Yeah.
I agree with you, but I'm going to argue her point just for the sake of
okay.
Good banter. So
explain
to me why it was a race.
Because it's genetics. It's not only it's not the fact. It's not just a religion. So, for example, if I've got Jewish blood, so they would take into consideration is it the Germans? I say the Germans. I don't say the Nazis because it was the Germans. I'll say the Nazis for this point. The Nazis they invented or they used a system called eugenics. And eugenics was where you measured certain parts of the body and they grouped them into those different races. So the Aryan race was their idea of the perfect human, and they had certain dimensions of nose, face, or whatever. But anyone that came under a certain style of face or length of face or whatever it was, measurements, you were a part of this other one. But she basically said that it couldn't be classified as racism because they were both white.
The distinction about the white part is what made it.
Yeah, and see,
I mean, I think that's wrong because there's no such thing as the white race, right?
No.
If you're breaking it down to that, there's Englishmen, there's Irishmen, there's.
Well, there's only one human race. That's what it is. There's one human race. There's ethnicity is what it's supposed to be called.
We're talking about it in that context, I guess. But I agree with you. But yeah, I mean, there's no white culture, right? There's no like white race. There are a bunch of different ethnicities and nationalities that make up the group
no white culture. So then why is the black culture?
Excuse me?
Right, you just said there's no white culture.
Because there's no individual one.
Culture, so why is there a black culture?
Because there's a distinction. There's one individual black culture in the United States. There's multiple white ethnicities.
For example, you got a black American and stuck them in the middle of Swaziland, they'd be out of their depth. Just because they're black don't mean they're going to fit in. You know what I mean? But there's different.
The problem is you're referring to black universally as
African American. There's no individual culture for the white race. There is no individual culture for the black race because they are made up of not millions, but lots of different cultures.
But when you refer to it, people refer to it as if there is, unfortunately, and that's where the confusion comes in. I think it's because they refer to African Americans as being the black race when there is multiple.
But I think what Almighty's trying to say is. There's no culture at all. There is, but they're not. It's not just the white people's culture. Like, for example, there's a British culture. There's a French culture. There's a German culture. There's an Italian culture.
Right. So I guess what I was saying is more in the context of America. I should clarify that. There is like black culture in America, but there isn't white culture in America because there are so many different groups. That does that make more sense?
That's the Spanish. There's loads of mix.
Well, it's just how when we refer to it, is like when we say black cultures, I don't know, in America that seems to be what happens is we don't.
But I would also say that about the black culture in America as well, because they're a mix. I mean, there's Haitian, there's
I think it just comes straight down to how it's being referenced, not its actual effect. Like when we say it, that's what we mean. But there is black culture in all over the world, and multiple cultures the same way. It's just that when, for some reason, our dialect, it's gotten to have its own label in that sense.
Okay, I have a question. This is more of a joke question.
But before you go on, Almighty, Posy, do you agree with that there are individual cultures within the skin color, or not?
Sure. Like
not like one culture for all white people, one culture for all black people. It's lots of different cultures.
Right. And I need to be super clear. I was referencing like American society for that.
Okay.
Not worldwide, but absolutely there's different cultures worldwide and things like that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't disagree with that at all.
Okay, so my joke question, right? Why is there no Batman culture?
There is. It's the 1%. No, it's funny. Like, Batman is good entertainment, but really, he's exemplifies everything that's wrong with America, man. He is the 1% beating up on all the poor people with the money that he exploitatively took from them. Like, that is 100% America right there. While they
on the grounds of better good.
Yeah, on the grounds of better good, while they commit the crimes that are necessary to survive because he has all the money.
Who do you think the best Batman was?
Michael Keaton.
Yeah,
Adam
West.
Adam West
was pretty good. I gotta be honest with you. I think what's his face? Oh, I can't remember his name.
Ben Affleck.
No, he was fucking terrible. They should never have given it to him.
Was he terrible, or was it the fact that he didn't get a standalone movie? Like, you need to think of the movies he was in, right? Was it him being bad, or was it the movie and the writing around him being bad?
Yeah, maybe.
I think it was both. I don't think Ben Affleck would have been a good Batman.
Yeah, he just has the asshole look of him. You know, maybe he
never changed character. He never changed character from Bruce Wayne to Batman. He was always the same character. See, Michael Keaton was fucking good because he had two completely different characters. And the idea behind Batman is that he's a mental case and he's got two personalities. And when Michael Keaton was Batman, he was a badass and he talked like a badass. But when he was Bruce Wayne, he was a cocky, kind of arrogant, aristocratic kind of rich boy. And it was good. That's why he did it. And the second one to that would be the English bloke that did it. He was in Terminator. What's his name?
Christian Bale.
Christian Bale.
I think he was serviceable.
Yeah, he was serviceable. He kind of had that split, but it wasn't
the movies
completely.
for him made him a good Batman.
Yeah, I think so. I think the films around him made him a good Batman, but I don't think that Ben Affleck was a good one at all. Even if he was stuck in the middle of Batman Begins, you know, I mean,
they could have made him Green Lantern. They should have made Ben Affleck Green Lantern.
I'll tell you what I think, though. Robert Pattinson is going to be a fantastic Batman.
I reckon he could be. I reckon he definitely could be. He's a good actor, and I know a lot of people think think of him as fucking that little guy from Hogwarts.
Yeah, one of my mates does, and I keep arguing with him. I'm like, watch Lighthouse. He's like, no, I can't because I see him as a Twilight kid. I'm like, so when you watch Daniel Radcliffe movies, you see him as Harry Potter. He's like, no. I go, that's the same fucking thing, mate. Like, watch a different movie.
But if I see, like, what's his name? The guy who played Forrest Gump, Tom Hanks. If I see him in anything, he's just Tom Hanks. Like, he's never a character. It's like, oh, look, Tom Hanks is pretending to be somebody else right now. Like, hey, look, Tom Hanks is pretending to live in an airport. Oh, look, Tom Hanks is pretending to have a mental disability.
But I love you, Jenny. Just see him doing that every time I see him. You ever seen that comedy sketch where he's supposed to have sex with that football?
Oh, the volleyball.
The volleyball, and the next day he's like crying and saying sorry to it because he thinks he raped it.
Oh man. I guess the volleyball can't give consent, right?
Exactly. The volleyball definitely can't give consent. Poor volleyball.
Is that still technically rape?
Yes.
Right. I've got a point. I've got something for you here. I discussed this a couple of weeks ago in one of my streams. Right. So, if a woman drinks more than a man, right, the woman can then say, like, if they have sex, that man raped her with consent, even if they both had consent. What do you think?
Took advantage.
There is so there is an amount, and it's different. I'm not saying like there's an established amount, but there is an amount of alcohol that destroys a person's ability to give consent, and I think that's how it's considered.
In certain areas, it's actually any alcohol. In Virginia, I think it is, or if it was just in the area where I was at, if you have any alcohol whatsoever, you have no ability to give consent. That's what's considered.
I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but I think that's how it should be viewed.
Yeah, it's one of those things. How do you enforce it? Like, I had one sip of whiskey. Well, technically, you're not legally allowed to give consent at that point, but how fucking often does that happen?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's the other side too. Like, obviously, that could probably be exploited. So in cases of that, there probably should still be an investigation, right? You can't just agree. There should be an investigation, and it should be determined that that was legitimate, right? And it's not being exploited. But
question is though, why is a man? I don't understand how you can go and get drunk with a girl, and then it comes down to the signs before then. Surely at some point in your head you're saying, okay, this girl is inebriated. I can't shag it because it's.
Well, so that's the thing is you both get drunk, but here's the idea is like you're both drunk, you're both unable to. It shouldn't happen at all, but no one's going to stop that. You're both drunk, you have to go into it, then later what it is, you both regret it. But people are going to side with one side or the other for whatever reason.
I don't know, mate. I've been proper plastered, and I've stopped myself from shagging some mingers.
I haven't.
That was so British.
What's that old Willie Nelson song, 10 with a 2? There's a Willie Nelson song called 10 with a 2. It's like, last night I came in at 2 with a 10, but at 10 I woke up with a 2.
Yeah, exactly.
I ain't never gone to bed with a lovely woman, but I woke up.
I've been very, very drunk, and I've prevented myself from going any further with a girl that wasn't very attractive.
I used to make up with him. Like, fuck.
I mean, I'm sure we've all been in a situation where, I've been in a situation where I've had an opportunity like that, and I
was never invited to parties.
Do not proceed. I guess it depends on the quality of the person, right? Like,
I mean, if you see a girl that's there was a case in the UK, and this girl was dead. She something had happened to her. She was killed. And this I call him a gentleman, but I use that term in very, very light terms. His excuse was that he walked down the street, saw the woman drunk on the floor, and he had sex with her on the floor, but didn't realize she was dead.
Oof.
And that is what he used in court. If that was a fact, if that was actually what happened, I would rather have admitted to killing her than admitting to raping a unconscious woman on the side of the street.
I don't know what the point of that defense is. There's no good coming out of that.
I swear I didn't kill her, but I did rape her.
I didn't kill her, but I raped her. It's like my God, why would you? I mean, I'm a proper lad. I'm a laddie lad. You know what I mean? But I would never ever take advantage of a bird that's absolutely blotto. It's just not what you do. You don't do that. You got to have some sense of morality around you. I mean, obviously you can tell the signals, and you can work with those signals. But if you're completely paralytic when you get anywhere alone, you kind of usually just fall over and go to sleep, don't you? I don't know. I
used to roofie myself. This is real special.
Yeah, but there was a big thing about like the date rape drug and roofies and stuff like that. I don't see, because half of the pleasure, in fact, a lot of the pleasure is knowing that you're pleasuring your partner.
For some people,
for me anyway, that's
for some people, man. Like, not everyone is like that, dude. Like,
I'm a sensual kind of guy.
Get off on the power.
Well, first you have to be able to do that. I mean, if you can't do that, then what else do you know? So
yeah, but then you walk away and you try and get better next time, don't you? You don't go and rape somebody.
Not everyone, dude. Or you download hacks. You know what I mean? Like,
go on Google and figure out how to do some shit.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, that's probably the same people that do CS:GO hacks and stuff like that.
See what I'm saying? Like, they don't want to take the time to get better. They think that they should already be the best, and just because they're not, something must be wrong with the game. So you go download a hack. You know.
Oh, that's true though. You're right, Bozzy. That is true, man.
Whole different trains of thought.
But I just don't see the point in that, because like when I was single and I was that half of the fun of it was kind of chatting the girl up and getting into the point where she was like, yeah, I want to, and that was kind of the thrill of it. You know what I mean? That was like the joy I got from it. The sex at the end was just like, yeah. It's sex. It's just what it is.
For me, it just consisted of please, no. Please, no.
If you have to say please, mate, it ain't worth it, mate. I think a sex of having like a big shit. You know when you really need to have a shit and you got to get it out.
I mean, when you're done, your fingers and toes start tingling when you're done.
Yeah, it's like, it's a good shit. That's gone now. It's good. I've got it out of my system. But I don't
feel lightheaded, start sweating. Yeah. So. You have to bear down on something. Just grab the fucking railing next to you. I don't know. What are we talking about? Shitting or sex? I forget. Is it the same?
Same fucking thing, mate. Do you know shit for a woman is 1/10 of an orgasm?
I start giving them X-Lax for Valentine's Day.
Yeah, get some X-Lax for the woman. That's what they want, a big shit.
Oh yeah.
And a woman takes, is it 15 minutes more on the toilet than a man does?
Why are you timing that?
Now you know why, you see. That's why. Taking a big fat shit. That's what it is. Oh, dear me. It's 12:15, gentlemen.
Ooh.
Do you think at any point we answered any of the questions that we started off with?
Nope.
What, big fat shits?
I think we kind of went completely off subject there. We didn't talk about the morality elements of killing somebody. I think we kind of flicked over them slightly.
We just went to ways of how we would do it. I don't think that kind of took away any morale aspects.
I don't think it does. I don't think we kind of skipped over that, but we kind of answered some questions that weren't asked, which is quite good. Like 1/10 of an orgasm of having a shit.
That's all we need to know.
Have you guys got anyone you want to raid? Dark's on, but he gets raided a lot.
Yeah, Dark gets raided a hell of a lot, doesn't he? He's a good. Are you streaming tonight, Bozzy?
I have the Baz pod. No, not tonight.
Not tonight.
I'll be on tomorrow though.
We can. Well, I don't mind. Whatever you think, Almighty. Whatever you think. We're up there, though, aren't we? Eh? We've got 7 people watching us, dumbasses. 12.
Yeah.
12 people watching our dumbasses talk a load of shit. That's not bad, is it? Really? Princess is on, but we always raid her as well.
Yeah. Eddie's on.
Eddie.
We've done Eddie a few times, haven't we, mate?
Yeah.
Poor old Eddie.
Someone called Power Belly.
Yeah.
I like the name.
Yeah, I like the name. He's got 3
Power
people
Belly.
in, so just because of his name.
Yeah, just give him a raid. That'll be all right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for sticking around and listening to us talk shit. Yeah.
Literally.
See you later.
We're not going nowhere yet.
I'm just. It's just such an eye opener talking to you guys.
Hey, question for you guys before we go, real quick, if I could.
Go ahead, because I'm still getting up the
right.
Twitch thing to do it.
Do you guys do you have a Discord for like viewers to join or anything?
Yes. That Discord that we sent to you is the Discord for anyone to join.
You're supposed to link, yeah? Now that we're at the end of this.
I shall do it in 2 seconds. Let me set up the raid and then I'll... Actually, I think anyone can get the invite.
I was just thinking, if anyone had any comments or whatever.
I think it'd be quite good to have that kind of interaction with them, see if they can get in there. I don't know whether we just open. I'm still suggesting that we do this on Discord, and I think that'd be quite interesting because we could have an open Discord and people can join.
Well, you don't want to be completely open because someone's going to jump in and do some crazy shit, and that would be bad.
Well, after the quiz next week is the 6th. We can do it then. We're going to try it. If you really want to.
I quite like what's it called when people come together and like smash heads?
What you're doing, sex, Paul?
No, that's not sex. That's clashing of heads, mate. That's wanking off.
Sound of one hand clapping.
Confrontation. That's the word that I quite like the idea of confrontation. I think confrontation is important. Not in an aggressive kind of sense, but mixed opinions. So
right.
I mean,
getting people together with different ideas to talk them out and find the best ones is absolutely awesome.
I understand.
It's fun to watch.
Yeah, I think so.
Well,
I hope it is, Buzzy and Zombie. I hope it is quite nice to have a little chat on these things.
It's not even on there, right? So I need to make a thing for it itself. Okay. Right. Oh, no, I didn't want to host him. No, shit. I hosted him instead of actually raiding.
I'll do the same thing, mate. It'll be all right.
We're back.
He'll kind of do the same thing.
Let me get his fucking thingy again. He's going to be like, huh?
He's like, what? What the fuck's going on? I'm being hosted. Who the fuck's this? I bet a lot of people think like that, though. Do you think this is the right platform?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Why not?
I think it's as good a platform as any. Like there's all the same reasons we stream games here. It's a good platform to talk.
Okay.
Well, the problem is when you're a Twitch affiliate, you can't broadcast on multiple sources at the same time.
No.
So
that's why I usually record and then attempt to cut it down. Right, let's go and raid him over. Right, it's raided.